Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. I'm so glad you're here, you guys. Per popular request, a lot of requests to put together the Lady C book as a compilation series. So that's what I've done. This is the first half of the book. It's Meghan and Harry, the real story. As you recall, I went through it a while ago, but I'm excited to put this together for you, and I do hope you enjoy it. Just remember, we've learned more things since the time of this recording. So you might hear me say something and be like, well, it's a little different than we know now. That's just how it goes with Hank and Skank. Their story's always changing, so there's always new information. So just keep that in mind. But I'm excited for you to hear this. I hope you enjoy it. You know, I'm a big fan of Lady C. Thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I hope you do too. So let's get into this. I'll put up the other half very soon. Take care. Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, I am so excited. We're going to be covering Lady C's book. That's right, Lady Colin Campbell has the book Meghan and Harry, the real story. So today we're going to be discussing chapter 1, and I just got to go ahead and tell you, I love this book. I couldn't believe from the very first page how much it's just so well written. She uses the best, most colorful language. It's got me riveted right off the bat. And I already know the stories and what happens, but I don't know. She teases stuff to come, and I can't wait to keep going. I'm so excited. So a huge thank you to everybody who recommended this book. I can't wait to dive in. We all know who Lady C is, but just in case you don't, I highly recommend you check out her YouTube channel. She's just different. She's fun, and I mean that lovingly, truly. She's got a different personality that I just really like. She has a certain way of speaking. She has a fun elegance about her. I want to come back as one of her dogs in my next life because she loves her dogs so much, and it's fun to see her with them, and she's just a lot of fun. So I was very excited to get into this book, and it did not disappoint. Chapter 1, I'm completely hooked. I guess if I can't come back as one of her dogs, I want to come back as one of her headbands. I just love her. She's just so much fun. Okay, so we start off chapter 1, and it sets the scene of May 19th, 2018. We know that. That's the wedding day. So it talks about Meghan stepping out of the antique Rolls Royce, and basically, she goes into the statements that the brides make on their wedding day. She refers to Diana, which, of course, she did write a book about. I know at least one, maybe more. But she's written about Diana, and she sounds like she's friends with Diana's friends. Lady C is a very cool person. She knows all of the who's who and seems to get the best stories, which I love. Again, it adds to the book. But she says all bridal gowns make statements. Diana, Princess of Wales, according to her friend Caroline Pride, used hers to announce to the world, "Here I am, take notice. I'm not a bit shy and intend everyone to know who I am." Catherine Middleton stated, "I'm stylish, athletic, and traditional. I aim to please. I relish my femininity. I possess exquisite but conservative tastes, with just a hint of daring beneath the surface." Now, they go into Meghan's. She says Meghan's not only conveyed that she loves clothes, was a feminine woman despite her avowed feminism, and something of an impact specialist where presentation is concerned, but also that she was thoughtful, considered, deliberate, and aware individual. And I will say Lady C does a good job when she starts out. She's paying all these compliments, and you might be like, well, where's the downside? Oh, it's coming. But she does do a good job of painting the initial hope that we all had for them and the excitement that we had for Meghan and Harry. Just Meghan in general joining the royal family. Beneath that, however, there was controversy. The Queen was said to have been surprised when her soon-to-be granddaughter-in-law, who was already married and divorced, had chosen virginal white in defiance of all accepted custom in royal and aristocratic circles. So the idea was that she shouldn't have worn a color lighter than cream. But Meghan was starting out as she intended to continue. Royal and aristocratic traditions were of scant importance to someone whose self-belief was so rock solid. Man, Lady Colin Campbell has a way of speaking, doesn't she? She does. Again, she's doing a wonderful job of painting the excitement that we all felt without going too dark right off the bat. So traditionally, when the couple gets married, they sign the register, they rejoin the congregation, and the custom is that the bride curtsies to the queen and the groom bows. It's always been done that way, and expected that it would be done that way this day. Princess Anne did it at her 2 weddings. Diana did it. Catherine did it. Princess Alexandra, you name it. Sophie did it. Duchess of York, Kent, Cambridge, etc. However, as Meghan rejoined the congregation and set about walking down the aisle with a beaming Prince Harry by her side, she omitted to curtsy when passing by the Queen. No one could believe it. She walked out, sailed down the aisle without so much as the merest bob in the direction of Her Majesty. So Lady C goes on to point out the Queen is not on record having made a comment or a complaint about it, but she will have noticed everyone did. My own thought here, Lady C didn't say this. It's just rude and disrespectful. You know, I love and support the Queen. Why didn't Harry say, we're doing this? Was he that afraid of her already? I know what Meghan wants, Meghan gets, but I'm just saying, like, it's just so rude and it just, I would say it's the beginning of the end, but it actually sounds like it started before that, as Lady C will go into. Lady C says, like many of the people present, I put Meghan's omission down to nervousness and forgetfulness. It really is easy for people who are not used to royal ways to forget each and every dance step in the choreography of royal life. But not everyone took so benevolent a view, especially as the run-up to the wedding had been fraught with scenes, tantrums, demands, most of which were carefully concealed from the public. Although by the time of the wedding, they were well known in court circles. Woo! Intrigue. I love it. So Meghan was unwittingly making waves. This was laying the ground for the misunderstandings and bad feelings that would soon characterize relations between the couple and many of the people close to them. So with the wisdom of hindsight, it's obvious that Harry should have nipped things in the bud before they had degenerated further by pointing out to Meghan that she needed to adopt a more British approach. He should have explained that what works in the film industry in Hollywood goes down like a lead balloon in Britain. People would not admire her for her ballsiness, but began to resent her for what he and she might admire as forthrightness, but they would deplore as being difficult, demanding, and brash. So Lady C explains, Harry, up until then, had enjoyed a reputation for affability, even though they knew him to be hot-headed and emotional, and that he would often take things personally where he needed to take a step back. Where have we heard this before? But it sounds like he started throwing his weight around, playing alpha male, protecting his, quote, little woman as he backed Meghan up, even when he must have known the more positive response would have been to have a quiet word with her, instead of endlessly repeating the mantra, quote, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. So in doing so, he not only allowed her to continue getting people's backs up quite unnecessarily, they antagonized those who had previously had a high opinion of him. In reality, he was adding fuel to the fire where he could easily douse the flames with one part knowledge and the second part wisdom. So she goes on to say, a case in point was the fuss Harry and Meghan made over that damn emerald tiara. So we know the story, right? That Eugenie's wedding had to be pushed back because the way it worked is, of course, he outranks her, so he got to be married first. He took precedence over her, and so it would be unfair to deprive Eugenie of the tiara she had chosen. This had once belonged to Grand Duchess Zina of Russia. The Queen had promised Eugenie the use of it. That should have been it, right? And it would have been it, except for Meghan decided that she wanted to wear that one. And Harry was so eager to please her and to fulfill her every wish that he neglected to point out that she couldn't be lent something that Eugenie had already been promised. So Lady C explains, yes, Meghan did have a choice on a few selections. She couldn't just come in and scoop up whatever jewels she wanted to wear as if by right. She has no right to anything. All she can do is accept a loan, and a loan moreover, that means that the lower down the order of precedence she is, the more limited her choice. Well, you can imagine how that went over with Harold Fraud, as we've heard. But Lady C explains Meghan wanted this one because it was more spectacular, but also its history was more romantic and exotic. Too bad, so sad, already promised to Eugenie. So the Queen was put in the position via her trusted dresser and good friend Angela Kelly to make it clear to Harry and Meghan that they would have to accept what was on offer and not demand what was not. Now remember, Harry went on to talk crazy shit about Angela in his book. They could not stand her, and obviously it's because she was put in the position to tell these two spoiled brats no. And this is where I love Lady C's writing. Again, I'm only a couple of pages in, and she's pointing out, listen, the matter could have just rested there, and no one would have known. Nobody would have been any the wiser. But no, Harry and Meghan have to make an almighty fuss, not only about the tiara, but about things like the scent of St. George's Chapel and the ingredients about certain dishes that were being prepared for the wedding. Meghan apparently did all this questioning of the people that were there to help her and ended up causing great offense to staff members. She ended up implying that somebody that was helping with the wedding was a liar because Meghan claimed to be able to taste the existence of an ingredient. I wish Lady C had said which ingredient, but she didn't. But Meghan claimed to be able to taste the existence of an ingredient which she had banned from a dish. Wow. Just wow. It was then that they had to be talked to that royals don't speak to their staff like that. Again, Harry has no balls. Why are you not speaking up? Again, I think he was already drinking the Kool-Aid, it sounds like at this point, and he was being horrible to staff as well. And when discussing the scent of St. George's Chapel, and can I just digress for a second and say that is one of my favorite places I have been. St. George's, I've been lucky enough to walk through. It's so breathtakingly beautiful. It's at Windsor. It's just gorgeous. I hear it's like one of the Queen's favorite places. It's where she's laid to rest right now. And it's just a stunning, stunning building. I just loved it so much. Just gorgeous. I hate that these two are affiliated with that place. But anyway, so Meghan didn't like how it smelled. So she raised a kerfuffle about it and floated the idea of having it sprayed with a perfume of her choice. It went down like a lead balloon. As one courtier told me, quote, this is great, ready for this? We were really astonished to find that this minor TV actress from California was so demanding that she was giving us the message that we should up our game and satisfy her and her much higher standards. Oh, brilliant. I love it. I love that. I love her. I love that Lady C called her a minor TV actress from California. But Lady C says once again that Harry, quote, kept on saying what she wanted she must be given. So according to Lady C and her sources, this was a repeated theme. Wow. But the royal family were trying to make them happy, but of course the victims never saw it as much of an effort. Wow. Lady C goes on to say that Meghan and Harry were, quote, belittling staff and making them feel devalued. As far as she and Harry were concerned, Meghan was their victim. They were not hers. So the rumblings of Harold and Fraud's bad behavior started even before the marriage. They were rubbing people the wrong way, but Lady C points out everyone had just kind of hoped things would settle down once they were married. That Meghan could dampen down her California ways, and Harry, who is rapidly alienating his admirers and gaining a, quote, well-earned reputation for throwing his weight around in a wholly unacceptable manner, would revert to the right-on, lovable bloke he had been up until then. No one foresaw that Meghan and Harry were on a roll and that they would spark each other to even greater heights, that they would not buckle to any opposition, that they regarded those who stood in their way as needlessly obstructive, and that if they didn't get their way, they'd decamp. Lady C goes on to explain how people really wanted the marriage to be a success. Once it was apparent that Harry was determined to marry Meghan, the whole royal family, the court, etc., they all fell into line. She discusses how the British press and the general public, everybody, were excited about this, and they also embraced, quote, Meghan's mixed race heritage. That she goes on to talk about the other mixed race unions in the royal house, different royal houses, and how the feeling was that it was high time for the British royal family to be caught up with their continental cousins. But it ended up becoming an opportunity for Harry and Meghan to spin things, and with the American press and, specifically, they convinced him into thinking that Meghan was a victim of racism in Britain, where nothing could have been further from the truth. She goes back to the wedding and says, one had hoped after such a brilliant start that the couple would have continued to be as feted and admired as they were on their wedding day. Meghan and Harry both let it be known that they were deeply committed to their work, which would revolve around charitable and humanitarian activities. I'm laughing because, again, knowing how all this turned out. Yet 4 days after the wedding, she was having dinner, talking about Lady C, she was having dinner at an influential aristocrat's house. I just love it. I want to be at that dinner party. My goodness. Come sit next to me. We'll talk crap about Harry and Meghan. So she was at dinner, and she said this person has impeccable palace connections. And she heard a report that, quote, filled me with foreboding. The day before, Meghan had joined Harry and Prince Charles and Camilla at a garden party at Buckingham Palace to celebrate the Prince of Wales' patronages in recognition of his 70th birthday. She does not say what took place quite yet, but she says she will cover it later on in this book. I can't wait. I suspect it has to do with the picture shown right here, but I can't wait to hear about it. Again, teasing the good stories to come. Ooh, I'm so excited to get into this book. She brings it up to say she was still optimistic until she had dinner at this person's home. They brought up an event that happened here with Meghan, and that is what told her, uh-oh, it's foreboding feeling that, things are not right. Lady C brings up it's Meghan's unsuitability to royal life and Harry's blanket support for her. It just made it all go wrong. Quote, for every foot they put right, they put 4 feet wrong. We've all said the outcome, it could have been so much better. It could have been so different than how it's gone. She concludes the chapter by saying, had any author written a work of fiction with plot along the lines of Harry and Meghan's story, it would have been dismissed as too fantastical to be believed. Oh, so good. I love Lady C. I love this book. Can you tell in my voice? Hopefully you can hear the enthusiasm, or Harry for that matter. I feel like I've researched it to death and I'm kind of over it. So To save my sanity and yours, I'm going to skip over the boring parts, but there are some highlights I'd like to touch on in this chapter. It is a longer chapter because it does go through Meghan's history. It goes through Harry's history. We've all heard that stupid soap story a million times, so I'm not going to bore you with all the details because you know it, right? We're all here. We know this story. We've heard it a million. It's like Meghan's only party trick. She likes to tote that story out. So we've heard it. Let's move on from that, but I do have some highlights that I want to hit. Here I am saying I don't want to talk about the soap story, but I'm going to start off by talking about the soap story. The only reason is because Lady C points out, empowering though the message was, there were 4 difficulties with the scenario, all of which were picked up on once Meghan and Harry started going out seriously, and the palace did the background checks that it does on all people who become closely involved with the royals. Firstly, Meghan was not 11 in 1995, as she had claimed, but 14. Secondly, Hillary Clinton was not First Lady in 1992, again, as she had claimed, when Meghan was 11, but became First Lady in 1993 when Meghan was 12. Thirdly, there is no evidence that her sole letter altered the course of history. I love that sentence so much. Procter & Gamble did change its tagline, but it was optimistic, that's a polite way of saying bullshit, of Meghan to suppose that it did so as a result of one letter written by an 11 or even 14-year-old Meghan Markle. Lastly, no advertising agency could replace an advertisement in a month. Advertisers take months to prepare. There are parts of advertising campaigns in which spontaneity and responsiveness of the sort to which Meghan was laying claim simply do not exist. So basically, we've gone over this in Revenge. We've gone over it here. It sounds like it's bullshit. It sounds like it's just complete bullshit. And what Lady C's point of view is that, you know how when you write... Well, I think it happens with the royals, too. You can write certain people, a president or something like that, and get just a nice generic response back, I think. So Lady C goes on to say, in fairness to Meghan, she's a creature of Hollywood. The values there are different from those of palaces. Fantasy and self-promotion are not frowned upon, nor is exaggeration, all of which are viewed as valid tools for getting your message across. So, just as I said with Tom Bower, it's in what he says and in what he's not saying. With Lady C, it seems to be in what she says and her regal way of saying things. I think that is her very regal way of saying Meghan full of shit. She goes into Meghan's upbringing. We've heard it a million times. She reiterates the thing that we've all heard, which is, sounds like Doria was in and out of her life. She doesn't specify exactly why. I believe that part's coming from Tom Bower, hopefully soon. Come on, Tom Bower. Thomas was her rock. He was always there for her, taking care of her, making sure she was provided for, paying for expensive school. You know, we know the stories. Let's jump over to Harry and what's up with that guy. I do want to point out one other thing, and another reason why I love Lady C, and you will too. She had actually invited Thomas Markle to come stay with her, and he was going to. And then, unfortunately, that's when he had his stroke. But he was meant to come stay with Lady C. So he sounds like he was a lot when he was a kid. They do talk about his days at Eton and how, according to Lady C, the school had to alter its academic requirements so that Harry could pass tests. And even then, he'd fail them to the despair of his masters. There are stories of, like Sarah Forsyth, for example. She was an art mistress who ended up suing Eton for unfair dismissal. She maintained that she had been asked to assist Harry with text for his expressive art project. So a lot of bending the rules to help him. There was evidence suggesting that Eton got very creative with Harry. And what I mean is they would try to mark his examinations and different things more positive than they actually were. She does point out that William was an excellent student. He was recognized both by his teachers and by other pupils. He had done very well academically, and he was athletic as well. He got along with his peers. He ended up getting elected into this group of prefects who ran the school. He'd be chosen as head of this. It's a whole honorary thing. He was very popular. Talking about William, of course. The same could not be said of Harry. A parent of one of Harry's contemporaries told Lady C, quote, Harry was not liked. He was antagonistic, it sounds like. He was an angry young man. Lady C says, quote, Harry had a definite chip on his shoulder and it made him unpopular. Harry would later claim that he struggled not only academically but with sports. Although he still excelled in them, even rugby was a problem because boys, quote, would see me on the rugby field as an opportunity to smash me up. The truth is, that was only part of the problem. Harry could be needlessly vitriolic, such as when he was pitted against a Jewish opponent from one of the other top public schools and he hurled anti-Semitic abuse at him. So this came straight from her book, and she says she learned of this because she talked to a priest who was at the school with the boy that this happened to. So I'm kind of gliding over this part because most of this we had heard about the officer training course at Sandhurst and how we've heard a lot about it. But according to Lady C, by 2006, Harry he'd been way more straightened out than he had been when he first entered Sandhurst. He completed his training. He was commissioned a cornet, which is a second lieutenant. Anyway, so Harry had finally come of age and started to find himself. William, of course, he had enrolled at Sandhurst, having graduated from St. Andrews in Scotland. I love Scotland. So then we go over to Meghan. She had attended Northwestern. From here, we go into chapter 3. Again, kind of breezing over this until we get into the good stuff, because that's what I'm here for. But it sounds like Tom truly did, if you can believe every book we've read, Tom truly did everything for Meghan. Anything that she needed, he provided for, from financial support to support when she was auditioning. According to Lady C, it didn't matter whether Meghan succeeded on the big or small screen, nor even whether she got her big break via commercials. All that mattered was that she was going to become as big a star as she could, and he was there helping her along the way. What Lady C does go into is that Meghan had ambitions in spades. That's something we've also heard. Her ambitiousness goes way beyond her discernible attributes, meaning that any success she achieved would be down to her character more than anything else. I did highlight a couple of sentences I just want to read because I think it sums up something that we've seen. Meghan refused to give up, no matter how dejected she became at times. She firmly believed that she was special, that she was better than others perceived her to be. I would say maybe stop it, better than others. At least that's how she perceives herself. That she was so bright and resourceful that she would be able to convert any opportunity into something more major once she got her foot through the door. I would say, again, that still translates because, she set her sights on something and she made it happen, however horrendously it turned out. So we know that Meghan's first break, I guess, was on the movie, remember A Lot Like Love with Ashton Kutcher? She played, quote, hot girl and had, I think, one or two words that she spoke. Well, what I didn't realize is that this happened because her friend from Northwestern, Lindsay Roth, had a casting job on the movie. So she pitched Meghan, and Meghan got it. Meghan, according to Lady C, informed the director, Nigel Cole, that she had read the script and thought she'd be better suited for a larger role, which he did not give her. But she did get this role, and this kind of started things off for her. So then we go into the Trevor of it all. I'm going to breeze over this because I didn't see new information too much coming up here. We know he was a producer. They hooked up. They were living together. It took some of the pressure off of her financially. He seemed to be making good money. Now, an interesting part here is Lady C goes into this, and I didn't know this. Meghan's rage was something which she kept well concealed until she started writing an anonymous blog called The Working Actress. I didn't know about this one. In it, she revealed how distressing she found it when she was turned down or not considered for roles which she knew she was perfect for, even though no one else agreed with her. She wrote about the distressing time she took to crying her eyes out. I had to hesitate and laugh. I was waiting for the part where she's crying on the floor. But she took to her bed, crying her eyes out with a bottle of wine and bread for comfort because she had not got some role that she had yearned for. Her hunger for success was never exceeded by the pain of rejection and frustration of not being acknowledged the way she yearned to be. But the blog showed that she was a close-run thing. In it, she was open about her self-pity, pain, and while she did not spell it out, beneath that lay fury. Boy, have we seen that. Just look at the screen if you don't know what I'm talking about. Good Lord. So you have his fury and her fury. It seems like a really great couple, right? So then we get to the part where she got her role in Suits. Again, we know this, so I'm going to get to the good stuff. So it was about the third season of 7 of Suits, during which Meghan played Rachel Zane, that her marriage to Trevor started to unravel. So she goes into how Meghan began to despise Trevor because she started to look down on him. And she felt like she had moved up and he had not. He wasn't doing as well as she'd liked him to. And moreover, his exuberant personality had started to grate on her now that she was mixing with a more refined circle. So Lady C goes into how Meghan had had a change of heart concerning Trevor, and that, according to her, it struck Trevor just out of the blue. That she knew it had been brewing for a while. He had no idea. Nikki Pretty, her former friend, a very close friend, the one that she'd gone to England and taken the pictures outside of Buckingham Palace, that friend had a similar experience with her. According to Nikki's interpretation of Meghan's motives, having found herself a new, more, quote, classy circle of friends. Now, this is funny because classy comes up a lot. Meghan apparently used the word classy all the time around this time. So it's just funny because I would not use that word to refer to Meghan Markle. Anyway, having found a new classy circle of friends, she did not wish to be bogged down with her embarrassing misfit of a husband or even her old and less establishment circle of friends. Once she decides you're not part of her life, she can be very cold. It's this shutdown mechanism she has. There's nothing to negotiate. She's made her decision and that's it, Nikki said, explaining how Meghan dropped the axe on Trevor as well as on her old circle of friends. Having achieved a new, more elegant circle and a degree of renown in successful TV show, it was like a light switched off. There's Meghan before fame and Meghan after fame. After 3 seasons of Suits, she called me to say that her marriage was over. Maybe she had started to change before then, and I was refusing to see it. So that Nikki Pretty goes on to explain that they had had a lifelong friendship, but there were 2 straws that did it for her in terms of letting go of Meghan. The first was when Meghan fell in love with a rescue dog and tried to take it away from someone who had displayed interest in it before Meghan did. She emailed the pet people asserting that the dog would have a better life in the Suits family than it would with the other prospective owner. Nikki felt that she was playing the, quote, Suits card, I love that, to gain advantage to which she had no entitlement, and it left a sour taste in her mouth. Meghan, of course, had another take on it entirely. She wanted the dog and was prepared to do whatever it took to get it. She would never have thought she was being ruthless, just clever and using everything at her disposal to get her own way, being a winner. The death knell of the friendship became the way Meghan behaved toward the end of her marriage with Trevor. Nikki was bemused with the way she ended the relationship, simply posting back her wedding ring and engagement rings without any explanation, leaving him feeling like something was stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Although there had always been, quote, fights between them, there had been no warning that the relationship was even under threat, much less that it was in the danger of coming to an end. Nikki, who was friendly with both Meghan and Trevor, telephoned her lifelong friend to speak to her about it after seeing Trevor and learning what she'd regarded as being the callous and brutal way in which Meghan ended the marriage. But Meghan refused to impart any wisdom or any information to the best friend she had had since the age of 2. Nikki felt that she had not only changed personality, but also developed a new circle and really couldn't be bothered with her old one anymore. It was obvious to me that she wasn't the friend I'd grown up with, Nikki said, and decided to cut her out of her life entirely. People who have known Meghan all of her life believe it was that Nikki was wise to jump. Had she not done so, she might as well have been pushed. So at least there's a comfort of doing the dropping. That was not consolation her father would have. So from here, she meets Corey, that very good-looking chef. They hook up. They were living together when she met Harry. We'll get into that. And then, of course, Harry had dated Chelsea as well as Cressida. And then Harry met Meghan. We are told that story about how they were set up through their friend Violet, who happened to know William and Harry. Now, interestingly, Violet has never confirmed that she played Cupid. To quote Lady C, she wouldn't, would she? Lady C brings up Meghan's own account, quote, "When she wanted to set us up, I had one question. Is he nice? Because if he wasn't kind, then it didn't seem like it would make sense." Meghan was displaying just the right degree of reluctance, as it reassured Violet that she was truly the lovely, sweet, personable, loving young woman that she was appearing to be. She continued to be seen like this until she and Harry were about to get married. It was only then that cracks began to emerge and the perfect facade she had hitherto presented to the royal world. But no one is perfect, and few people believed that Meghan would be anything but a positive addition to the royal family, while none could have imagined that within a year of matrimony she was laying ground for her and Harry to step down as senior royals. Woo! So good. So good. We're getting into the good stuff now, and I'm here for it. So we pick up with Harry and Meghan. They had their 15th story of how they met and went on their first date. Of course, Meghan had to put in the, "Is he nice? I had one question. Is he nice? Because if he wasn't kind, then it didn't seem like it would make sense." So Meghan was displaying just the right degree of reluctance, and that helped reassure Violet, the one who, in one of the iterations, and according to Lady C, helped facilitate the meeting. So she was trying to convey that she was, quote, "lovely, sweet, personable, and loving young woman." Wow. It's just so funny knowing what we know now, and it sounds like that could not be further from the truth. So according to Lady C and everything else we've read, Meghan's sole mission was to bag not any old prince, but, quote, "the prince." I guess that means Harry. I think that's giving him too much credit because, whew, I just don't understand why anybody would want to bag that guy. But the same could be said for her. They seem like the perfect match made in hell. So according to Lady C, it was Meghan was able to captivate Harry from the outset because she, quote, "needed to have a voice." And yes, you heard that pause in my voice because, damn. If only they'd use their powers for good instead of the path they've gone on. But yeah, so apparently that transfixed him. He loved how opinionated she was, and she made it clear that she must remain in control. And for a boy with mommy issues, I'm saying this, not Lady C, for a boy with mommy issues, that seems like it struck the perfect chord with Harold of Harold and Fraud. So they go on 2 dates back to back in London. We've heard about the Soho House, although Lady C points out it was actually a different private club that they had their first date. I'm going to err to the side of Lady C because she seems to know the deal with these two and they can't tell the truth about anything. So why would if they can't agree on how they met, why would where their first date took place be any different at all? So they went to Botswana. He Botswana'd her, the usual. We've heard it. But the couple would later claim that they had 5 or 6 months of privacy before their relationship went public. According to my new BFF, Lady C, that it was not the case. Apparently, they only went out a handful of times over a period of less than 4 months before the news of the relationship broke. To quote Lady C, this shows the intensity with which they shared. Then October 30th, 2016 happened and Sunday Express, quote, blew the lovers' cover. So they let the world know that Prince Harry had a girlfriend. Her name was Meghan Markle. And within hours, quote, she became a household name for the first time in her life. She had finally arrived where she wanted to be and the fun had really begun. So then we go into chapter 4. So here's where, again, I have to give credit to Lady C. She does such a good job of explaining. Yes, we are familiar with the story that broke in October, and oh my gosh, the costume party with Harry, where they had gone out, and it was their last night of freedom before the news broke, and he had to rush back to we know that. Okay, here's why I love Lady C. She explains that flattering, in-depth information about Meghan arrived to the press within moments of the story breaking, which begged the question, who is fashioning the narrative behind the scenes? Okay, let me break it down for you. Basically, what she's saying is Meghan knew this was going to happen. Shocker. Who would have had motivation to leak the story? Meghan. She had already prepared for the story to leak and already had sent, according to Lady C, I think it was People Magazine, Daily Mail, other press publications, glowing stories about herself just to give them more positive things to print. Do you see where I'm going with this? All part of the plan. To further show that it had been planned out, aka leaked by Meghan, Lady C points out that not 24 hours before the quote-unquote leak, Meghan had posted, quote, "My cup runneth over and I'm the luckiest girl in the world." So she's verifying her status as Harry's girlfriend, knowing that the leak was going to happen. Now, the part that I didn't know, again, thank you, Lady C, is that apparently Meghan had given People Magazine special access to her, and in return, People had printed, quote, "Prince Harry is so serious with actress Meghan Markle that an engagement could be in the not-so-distant future," insiders suggest. So, hello. Again, all pre-planned, all by Meghan. There you go. So, Lady C goes on to point out all the ways that Meghan has been leaking stuff to the press and how the, quote, insiders seem to know a lot of personal information about Harry and Meghan. What a coincidence, right? And she brings up the question, whose interests were best served by confirming that Meghan was Harry's girlfriend and that they were involved in a serious relationship. Now, she points out that Lady C herself has been a victim of leaks to the press and that she lived through the time when Diana would tip off various writers and present herself as the victim of hounds. And she says that she has developed a nose for a plant. And so, again, she can see it from a mile away. She's pointing out that, oh, what a coincidence. Meghan seems to follow that pattern. Lady C does a great job of explaining that while these two complain incessantly about the press, they actually did her a huge favor when they were dating. They covered her nicely, they talked about her respectfully, and they even painted her as a, quote, major star. Yes, I can hear you laughing from here. Okay, so it sounds like they painted her in a nice light. They were very kind to her. They were optimistic about the relationship at the beginning. But then, according to Lady C, it took very little digging to discover what was actually going on. That Meghan had a history of, quote, cultivating, captivating, denigrating, and discarding both men and women in her ascent to the top. I love Lady C. I keep saying that, but I do. That's what I'm telling you. The language of this book is amazing. So, a male journalist told Lady C that as Meghan climbs to the next rung of the ladder, she plants the soles of her shoes on your head. And when you wipe off your face, you see it's covered in cow dung. So, again, I think people are starting to see what was really happening and really going on with Meghan. Meghan, in other words, had discarded a whole load of friends of both sexes, aside from men with whom she had been involved, and done it in such a way that they had become enemies. She refers back to, do you remember when Meghan said, "Is he kind?" And talks about how Meghan would find friends who she deemed kind, potentially knowing that if she ditched them, they probably wouldn't speak out. So it was around page 117 that Lady C goes into a really in-depth and interesting explanation of why the British press is so much more intense than American press and, other press around the world. She said Australia might kind of come close, but nothing touches British press and their digging, reporting, etc. But she goes in to explain that no one wanted to hurt Harry. He was truly popular, and if Meghan was the girl he wanted and could make him happy, well, then that's that. And almost by common but silent consent, that apparently the press took a soft line on her. Well, apparently, according to Lady C, allegedly, I should say, this journalist at the Mail told her that, quote, "It's not often we find ourselves having to downplay instead of exaggerate. But with Meghan, that's what we had to do from the outset. It was the only way to get stories to pass the legal department." And what they mean is, it sounds like there were so many people that were speaking about, again, the way she would discard others and mistreat people, things like that. And so many people, there were a trail of bodies basically in the wake. And the Mail started to uncover it and could not believe how many people were saying the same things about her, about being calculated, and then how she cast people aside, everything we've seen, right? But again, the press was like, we like Harry, this is fine, let's just ignore it for a little bit. Completely opposite of what Harry and Meghan would have you think, which is the press was mean to them, and they were all the ist words that Harold and Fraud like to throw around. So this was about that time. Remember when Harry, against the palace's recommendation, put out that statement saying, "Don't be mean to my girlfriend." So he had never done that for any of his previous ladies. And so they took it as a sign of, oh, he really is serious about her. And it helped them for a little bit be in a positive light, garnering them sympathy from their legions of romantics and admirers who were rooting for them and hoping for their long-term happiness. So it bought them time. Well, Lady C points out that he, in his statement, was conflating responsible writers with crazy opinionists. He was actually pissed at people on Twitter writing their theories about what was going on and their thoughts on Meghan, that sort of thing. And he was using the latter, aka the crazy opinionists, to silence the former, which was the responsible writers. So a lot of stuff going on in there. She also brings up that sexism was a red herring thrown into the mix for a useful purpose. Meghan was personally responsible for the content on the TIG, and in it, she regularly beat the twin drums of racism and sexism. Weird. Using the ist and the isms to get attention for herself. Where have we seen this before? Oh yeah, every move they make. So Lady C explains, had Meghan tried with the press, had she tried to understand what she was dealing with and the way it functioned and why it does the way it does, then she might have stood a chance. But in her ignorance, she lost the ability to cope. But that's where I say Harry sucks, because just like he could have taught her how to curtsy, not that I believe that story, but he should have explained to her about the British press. I've had a lot of you guys from the UK in my comments explain to me about the British press. So why couldn't he explain it to her? But he had a real hatred of it, born from his belief that they had taken out Diana. Now, I'm going to read a quote from Lady C. Quote, in fairness to them, they had done no such thing. Diana would have survived that car crash had she been wearing a seatbelt. She was also responsible for press following her that night. She had telephoned journalists before leaving Sardinia to tip them off about her arrival in Paris. She continued tipping them off once she arrived in that city. If you are being chased by people you have encouraged to chase you, you surely bear responsibility for creating the chase. Dun, dun, dun. See why I love Lady C? That is brilliant. I had so many of you try to explain this to me in the comments. That's the part that I didn't realize. We had talked about this, and I definitely encourage you to go back and watch the revenge video because we did go into this in depth, where I explained that growing up, I thought it was what Harry said. It was told to me that way, that, oh, it was the press that did it. And so many of you had so many things to say in the comments about, no, she didn't wear a seatbelt. There was, an impaired driver, everything we've heard, right? Everything we've talked about. But again, I love the way she so succinctly explained that. So up until that news story broke, again, October 2016, Meghan's media coverage had been solicited either by herself or through the studios. So this was a totally different deal for her. And when it didn't go exactly how she had planned and these stories started coming out, that's when she encouraged Harry to put out his statement. Okay, so behind the scenes, the royal family actually had known about their relationship before the press did. When it became apparent that it was developing into something more than a, quote, 3-night stand, the palace does what the palace does. It did an investigation into Meghan's background, and it ascertained the backstory of her, and apparently it does this, of course, with anyone who becomes a close associate with any member of the royal family. I look forward to this happening to me when I become BFFs with Catherine. There was concern over, quote, Meghan's past, and at this point it was just an affair. So they weren't overly worried, but it was obvious from what the palace discovered about Meghan's past that she might be trouble with a capital T. So then we breeze right along to November 2017. Buckingham Palace announces Harry and Meghan's engagement, and the news was greeted with genuine enthusiasm publicly. Okay. Now I want to go on a very interesting journey that Lady C takes us on in this part of the book. I'm going to read you this line because I love it so much. Ready? Between the announcements of the engagement and of Charles's appointment to succeed the Queen as head of the Commonwealth, the most glorious cock-up concerning color took place. Only Princess Markle of Kent, a woman universally deplored in royal circles, could have orchestrated something so pointlessly self-defeating. At the Queen's annual luncheon party for all the members of the royal family at Buckingham Palace a few days before Christmas, she was photographed wearing a blackamoor brooch on her coat. Lady C goes on to describe her as, quote, vain and tiresomely affected. I would stake good money that she wore that brooch to garner the attention she seeks at every turn. So Lady C is asserting that Princess Markle of Kent wore this brooch deliberately. She had set out to knock the newcomer Meghan off the front pages, which she did. Now here's why I bring this up. Lady C does an excellent job of explaining this was, okay, the papers reported this brooch as being, quote, racist. Okay. But Lady C says, I cannot fairly regard it as possessing racist overtones. It did not represent a sub-Saharan black slave, but instead a North African aristocrat. So she goes in to explain that the jeweler himself, Alberto Nardi, He's a Venetian jeweler who created the brooch. He took strong exception to the way ignorant commentators in Britain and America jumped on the racist bandwagon to condemn this item of jewelry that he had made without even being aware of its cultural significance and its place of origin. So a whole lot of nonsense was written, and he's explaining that, quote, the brooch depicts a Moorish Venetian prince. And this was verified by a jewelry historian who went on to explain that, quote, the blacks in these pieces were essentially being depicted as aristocrats. And over the years, these objects became one of the city's most important symbols, symbolizing to Venetians their openness to other cultures. So not only are such items not racist in origin, but they actually give off the most powerful message of inclusivity. Could Princess Markle have actually been conveying a positive message rather than the negative one she was accused of? If so, it would have behooved Meghan to note that it's always dangerous for public figures to ignore public misconceptions, even when they're more knowledgeable and in the right. I found this part so fascinating, and you can tell Lady C clearly did her homework here, knowing that while she can't stand Princess Markle of Kent, the jewelry is not what people thought it was. It actually had a completely different message. Whether or not Princess Markle of Kent intended that is for you to decide. But it's fascinating to know the actual history of the jewelry versus what was reported on and what Harry and Meghan latched onto. So Lady C goes on to report that Meghan was fully included and asked to join the royal family for their Christmas celebration even before they were married, which was not something that happened with Diana or Catherine. And Meghan couldn't say that she wasn't fully welcomed, as Catherine and Diana could have, but never would have said. She was very much treated like a member of the royal family even before she officially joined. And then it was 27th December that Harry guest edited BBC Radio's For Today program, where he went on and explained that it had gone very well with Meghan being there with his family, and that, quote, she finally got the family she never had. So again, we've heard same sentiment expressed by Trevor at their wedding, and now we're hearing it again. The family she never had. What a slap in the face to her family. But guys, this is where I'm going to end it today. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I hope you're enjoying the recap of this book. We just have a few more pages of chapter 4, and then we will jump into chapter 5. And I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's getting juicier. And I love the extra knowledge we're picking up in this one. It's like stories we've heard, but with extra bits of juice in them, and I find it completely fascinating. All right, guys, I gotta dive right in here because this chapter blew my mind. Pun very much intended. Okay, here we go. I'm giggling like a schoolgirl. Here we go. All right. Let's just say that Lady C put out there that, well, let me just read it to you from what Lady C says. So that way we know what we're talking about here, because I don't know that I was fully aware of this. Okay, here we go. So this is chapter 5, page 137, in case you want to read this part of the book. I'm going to read directly from it. Quote, there was also her unpopularity amongst the people she had crossed in the past, some of whom would inevitably come out of the woodwork if she married into the royal family and briefed journalists against her. But even worse than than any of that were the, quote, hardcore porn tapes purporting to be Meghan Markle performing, and then she puts it in French, basically, some stuff. Lady C goes on to say, I have seen the tapes. We all know that nowadays it's possible to convincingly doctor tapes. So what looks like one individual could actually be two, with the head of one superimposed on the body of another. Maybe the woman in the tapes is Meghan's doppelganger. Maybe the face is Meghan superimposed on someone else's body. She's alleging, she's speculating here. We don't know. So I Googled it because I didn't know. And this is the picture I found, and people talking about what could be, very well could be, a doctored image. People have gone to point out, I didn't doctor any of these photos, by the way. People have gone to circle to show same mole, apparently similar feet. Could be somebody that looks very similar, and they've had to use these other things to block out body parts that were showing in the same image with whoever this person is. We don't know who this person is, right? But I didn't know this. Did you guys know this? Or maybe I had heard it but dismissed it. Again, we don't know. Maybe this is that, what do they call it? Deep fake AI stuff? I don't know. But interesting nonetheless. Interesting that Lady C put this hypothesis in the book that, maybe it's a thing, maybe it's not. We don't know, but interesting nonetheless. My favorite line from this paragraph was, quote, "The Meghan character is groaning in a manner reminiscent of her performances in Suits." So, interesting theory. Curious to know if you've heard such a thing. Have you seen the video of whoever this person is? I'm just very curious. Minds want to know, right? Enough dancing around. Just curious about it. Interesting theory. I need to know everything you know. Let me know in the comments. Okay. So this chapter starts off with a bang. It goes from there. So much going on. So in the year between the Sunday Express exposing their relationship, remember we've talked about it ad nauseum, the Halloween pictures, when Harry and Meghan were photographed together, all the way to the announcement of their engagements. So the powers that be had been able to get what they believed to be a, quote, accurate measure of Meghan. Now, according to Lady C, the Queen initially liked Meghan because she liked anybody who was bright, vivacious, and had a sense of fun such as Meghan, or one that Meghan conveyed. And this is where I do like Lady C. Lady C does a good job of trying to be very fair. She will pay Meghan a compliment when she feels like it's due, and she never beats around the bush in calling Meghan, I really don't mean those, by the way, those innuendos. I started talking about, adult videos, and here I am talking about bush. But anyway, oh my God. But Lady C does a great job of giving credit where credit's due, talking about how intelligent Meghan is and how she's got Harry wrapped around her finger and she's got the intelligence that he lacks. I don't know that I would use intelligence so much. She's clearly very driven. She makes up her mind to do something and does it. I would say maybe calculated is the word from everything I've read about her. It's the good stuff here, though. Lady C does a good job of explaining how Meghan exerts her control over Harry. They were happy he got to play the alpha male strutting around protecting his, quote, hyper-feminine flower against potentially adverse elements while she stroked his back and clucked after him like a mother hen with her chick. So Lady C goes on to say that she felt like that Meghan manipulates Harry emotionally. We've all discussed this with the insane PDA and the claw. By the way, if you're not subscribed, I'll get you with my claw. If you don't leave me comments, I will grab you with my claw. No, but she controls Harry emotionally is what Lady C is asserting here and what we've all observed. I don't know. But she's constantly reinforcing her control over him by agreeing with him, indicating how clever he was, how wonderful. And Lady C says, I wonder if he would have seen through her if the, quote, sex hadn't been so good. My rebuttal to that is, if the sex is indeed that good, then why does he always look like this? Why is he so angry all the time? But Lady C talks about how she could fill almost a role like Diana. It's the same shit we saw in Spare, right? I'm whispering like you're my confidants and they're in the room and we're talking shit about him. All right. She fulfilled the same thing as Diana, where she'd lead him around and be mother-like. Oh, so creepy. But also, quote, she'd snap at him if he stepped if he stepped out of line. She did it at Princess Eugenie's wedding in full view of everyone. I've heard this. I heard that they got into a big row at Princess Eugenie's wedding and they were fighting, and yeah, it seems like a real shit show, because that's the same wedding that I bring up all the time, because she decided, because she couldn't get the tiara that Eugenie had, she'd announce her pregnancy at the wedding to try to steal focus. Nice, huh? Really nice. But apparently they had a big row at the wedding, allegedly, whatever. But supposedly they had a big fight there. And according to Lady C, it was in full view of everyone. And I've seen her do it on many other occasions. That's a direct quote from Lady C. But if he moved too much out of her orbit or was in danger of eluding her, she'd reestablish contact physically. This would have the effect of sucking him in again. Again with the sucking. There was no escape from her. Not that he seemed to want to escape. It was on the contrary. So, again, the theme of controlling, dominating, that claw. I cannot with these two. I don't feel sorry for him either. He's a grown-ass man. He's weirdly treating her like she's his mommy and apparently obeying. So, I just wonder if he'd say the sex was still that good. She's still got her claws in him. She does in public. I just wonder about in private what that's like. But so she does. Lady C again goes into, we love William. Of course, we've heard that he was trying to slow things down and trying to get Harry to take things at a more considered pace. So we know how this went down really well, right? Harry totally listened. No, he didn't. But again, Lady C has a great quote here: marry in haste, repent at leisure. So William tried to introduce an element of caution into Harry's reckoning, even warned his brother how their mother had always preached the virtue of long-standing relationships rather than sudden passions. However, Harry had already burnt all his bridges emotionally and was now starting to burn them personally as well. So his response to William, it was aggressive, unappreciative, and resentful. He even accuses William of being jealous and trying to deprive him of his right of happiness. I'm saying it like this because this is exactly what we heard in Spare from the horse's mouth. The horse Harry. Herald and fraud. No, we heard it from Harry himself. He straight up at one point accuses William of being jealous, and at another point he accuses Charles of being jealous. So that seems to be his go-to response, and all I can think of is that's a very juvenile response. That is not a grown man who's ready for marriage and thinking like a 30-something-year-old. This is a little boy. And I'm not making excuses for him. He sucks. I'm telling him grow the F up. But he's saying William is jealous. It couldn't be that his brother loved him and William was trying to look out for him. It's that William was jealous, according to Harry. So Lady C goes on to point out that Meghan could appeal to Harry's protective instincts. Again, that alpha male thing that he's walking around and clucking about. Too bad he's cucked. And she could appeal to his protective instincts and capitalize on his family's reservations about the speed at which they were headed toward the altar. And it detached him further from his support network. Again, it sounds like I'm taking him out of the people to blame. He's just as much to blame as she is. Maybe even worse in this case, because he should have known. He should have known that William and everybody else involved had his best interest at heart. But nope, he picked Meghan. How's that working out now? So there's a really interesting story that Lady C goes into, how both the Queen and Prince Philip had a good relationship with Harry. Prince Philip apparently was known within royal circles for being a quote, an accommodating pragmatist who will always try to find a way that reconciles royal duty with personal urges. So in his eyes, sorry, my pen just fell if you heard that clicking. In his eyes, there'd be no better outcome than Harry and Meghan pursuing their relationships without matrimony until all the doubts were cleared up. And if they were not, then Harry could still remain with Meghan, but without that, ultimate commitment, without getting married. So it sounds like Prince Philip was trying to help. The quote that Lady C says, she said that she heard it from two different people, or it's widely reported that Prince Philip said, quote, "We step out with actresses. We don't marry them." She goes on to explain this wasn't him being snobbish. The qualities that make an actress successful are the absolute opposite of what makes a good royal duchess. And there was no doubt in his mind that it would be unfair to both Meghan and the monarchy to expect her to fulfill a lifetime of royal duty with a fully developed personality at odds with the requirements of the royal role. And now the part that's going to make you real mad, because it made me real mad. Harry. I just hate that guy so much. Here we go. All right. According to Lady C, Harry was so desperately in love with Meghan and willing to do, quote, anything to keep her, he discounted his grandfather's suggestion with the intensity of an addict being threatened with deprivation. He informed his grandfather that he would be marrying Meghan no matter what. It gets worse, don't worry. He ends up telling the Queen, quote, he was going to marry Meghan, and if you don't like it, you'll just have to suck it up. The Queen, according to Lady C, had never heard this expression before, but being an intelligent lady, kind of got the gist of it. Here's the worst of it. You ready? I would say telling the Queen, your grandmother, to suck it up. My grandmother was a queen, but not the queen. And I would never say suck it up to her. That is horrifically disrespectful and everything else. That's just horrendous. Okay. This is the worst part. You ready? Harry then issued, again, I got to say allegedly, according to Lady C, from this book, I'll tell you, page 149. Ready for this? Harry then issues the, quote, coup de grace by telling his grandparents that they would be accused of racism unless they agreed to the marriage. Of course, Harry knew only too well that Meghan's race was not a negative to the family, but a positive. But the public would not know that. So this was his ace in the hole. Think about that right there. He is straight up threatening the Queen with this. And he knows it. And it's so disgusting. Again, this was a woman in her 90s and her husband and dealing with these two petulant children and trying to make everybody happy and trying to do what was right and actually try to look out for Harry and say, hey, bud, make sure she's the right one. Maybe you want to slow this down. And he straight up threatens them, again, allegedly, according to this book. It just really disgusted me even more, and I didn't think that was possible, about both of them. And yes, I'm saying both of them. They're both disgusting people. And it's disgusting of Harry to talk that way to his grandmother and the Queen of England. So you can imagine how well this went over. The family didn't lay into Harry like I believe they should have, but the fears were, of course, already there, and it sounds like grew even more intense because the appearance was that she loved what she could achieve as a result of being Harry's wife rather than actually loving him, and that was her motivation. Still during this time, they were showing Meghan how welcome she was, inviting her to Sandringham Christmas and inviting her to these Boxing Day celebrations. Apparently there was a shoot that she had a real problem with, and instead of handling it like a big girl, she threw a fit because that seems to be the only way she knows how to communicate, both her and Harry. And what Lady C points out is, quote, what gets me is the underlying disrespect she seems to have for anyone who disagrees with her. I really think, and this is my personal opinion here, it all has to do with the narcissism. It's the same thing that comes up over and over. Why does she dress so crazy? Because she believes she knows best. And even if there were people telling her, hey, you need to fix your bra or whatever, get some better undergarments, whatever it is, she will not listen because she believes she knows what's best. If somebody dares disagree or have a differing opinion, she will not listen because she believes she knows what's best. And while we all have that to some degree, it sounds like it's off the charts with Meghan. And that's where I one of the huge problem lies is that, well, the lies, but also if you don't think you can learn from anybody else, what does that say about you and your sense of self? It's the most inflated I think I've ever seen between the two of them. So the chapter wraps up with her side of the family and how horrible her father was being treated in the press and how they weren't handling it particularly well. But Lady C points out that what became known as the Markle debacle could have been handled so much better by Harry and Meghan. They had everything at their fingertips. All it took was hiring people, lawyers or whatever it was, communication strategists, to help Tom Sr. and Samantha and whoever else, to not make things go down like this. Of course, we know that would never happen because why would Meghan want to help anybody, right? It doesn't matter that it sounds like, according to Lady C, her dad bankrupted himself helping her, but she would never want to lift a finger to help him, it sounds like. So the chapter ends with the awful story that we've been through in detail about her father cooperating with the paparazzi, stage photographs, that sort of thing. And how basically that was that. I mean, he had a second heart attack, and that's when Meghan stopped speaking to him. And apparently, according to the book, Harry berated him by text. Amazing how that detail is left out of Harry's telling of events, because they always have to spin themselves as the victims. So the chapter ends with, quote, the palace's worst nightmare, at least until Meghan and Harry bolted, had now begun in earnest. Look, I found another picture of Meghan. Looking good, huh? She's smiling. Yay. Oh, you guys. Oh, it's Friday. I felt like having a little fun in the photos, but I'm going to be showing wedding photos in this one because we are talking about the time of the wedding. Remember, they got married the 19th of May, 2016. And Maggie Poo chose to have one of her family members there. Sure, we'll get into that. So Lady C starts out the chapter by quoting Pharrell Williams. Yep, the guy that sang Happy, amongst other things. And I say that because we played that at our wedding, actually. Okay, so Pharrell Williams apparently told Harry and Meghan, quote, I'm so happy for your union. Love is amazing. Love is beautiful. Don't ever take it for granted. But what it means in today's climate, I just want to tell you, it's so significant for so many of us. Seriously, we cheer you guys on. Okay. Harry and Meghan's response was indicative of their attitudes. While she nodded graciously, completely in tune with the sentiments, she said, quote, oh, thank you, before stating that her critics don't make it easy. So she'd missed the point entirely. Which is now she had this duty to live up to, and no matter how difficult it was, she would be dashing the hopes of everyone everywhere if it were to fail. Oh, and fail it did. So what Lady C is pointing out is that it's beside the point whether the critics made it easy or not. Indeed, the mere fact that they did not was all the more reason to ensure that they succeeded in the role that, she was embodying. But of course, they have to have that victim mentality. They have to have that narrative, that horrible attitude, right? Nothing's their fault, even though it sounds like they were planning this or she was planning this from the beginning. I got really into this part of the book, and it's not that Lady C goes deep into the actual antics behind the scenes at the weddings. Believe me, I would like to hear about 10 hours of that. It was more about just pointing out things I honestly hadn't truly thought of. Meghan's adjustment to her royal role would have been much more successful if, to quote Lady C, if someone had pointed out that she had been perfectly happy to pay the price for being a cast member of Suits. And what she means is, like, think about how you'd have to hang around on set. And again, I love Lady C because she makes these digs at Meghan that I love. Quote, she willingly hung around the set waiting for 3 minutes of filming while she shot the breeze with the film crew for hours on end. So what she's pointing out is, so all these hours, you're just waiting around. It's a lot of boring stuff for a few minutes of your on time, and it's just part of it. It's part of the price you pay for the fame that comes along with it, right? Or the paycheck or whatever you're in it for. She'd have to do things like be a team player with the crew, although it sounds like, according to Tom Bower's book, that wasn't always the case. But Lady C points out she had willingly allowed herself to be used on publicity junkets, and when none was in the offering, she had volunteered for others she had volunteered for things like humanitarian work. Okay, all part of the job, right? But she wasn't willing to do the job in terms of being a royal. She wasn't willing. It goes along with that we should be getting paid for this mentality, right? She just wasn't willing to, quote, play the game. She wasn't willing to play along or play nicely with others. She was jeopardizing her chances of success as a result of her attitude. So Lady C goes on to say, here was Meghan, barely married, already bemoaning her lot and wanting to be taken for a hardship case while also demanding that everyone do everything her way. Success as a royal duchess was only possible if she remained a team player, if she understood that the game had changed and that she had a new role and a part to play. But there were still boundaries. She had to play along. She had to be nice about things, and she just wasn't willing to do that. She'd only received the praise she was looking for if she understood that it would take an entirely new form from what she was used to. So she would have to settle for an entirely different sort of gratification, this time more intellectualized, spiritual version that would be less obvious, but no less real or significant versus, what she was used to on the set of Suits. One of my favorite quotes of this part of the book, it's page 158, if you're keeping up, I highlighted in my book because I thought it was so good and so well said by Lady C. There's Meghan. If you are the sixth dancer in a chorus line and you're supposed to kick after number 5 and before number 7, you screw up the whole routine if you do so out of time. So that's what the analogy is, explaining how you have to work with each other in the royal family and how it all works. So in regards to the wedding, it sounds like it went really well. Behind the scenes, it was a massive relief that the day itself went off as well as it did, minus the unfortunate publicity involving Meghan's father and the rest of the Markle family. Who do we have to blame for that? Meghan herself. I'm going to interrupt myself and say, look at your screen. Look at this beautiful, adorable... I'm not even talking about Catherine here. I normally would. Look at Charlotte. She's so cute. I love this picture so much. She's so sweet. And screw Meghan Markle. Treating this beautiful little angel as anything less than that, Meghan's a terrible person. Also, I love Catherine. I have to put that there. Okay, so continuing on with Lady C, she explains that apparently Harold continued to say that what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. It comes up several times in the book that he fully backed her, and they demanded control of the wedding, notwithstanding neither of them having any financial responsibility for it, despite her being a newcomer to the royal scene and him acting as if she should be allowed to break every existing precedent and rule. So Meghan had never been disruptive or disrespectful of the parameters laid down by the producers of Suits, Lady C says. Again, Tom Bower paints a little different picture, but I see where she's going. She played by the rules on set of Suits to ensure it was a success. She had been happy to fit herself into that scheme of things, but yet here, not the case. So Lady C goes on to explain that nobility is not just a matter of rank, but it's a way of being, which is why one of the biggest insults in elite circles is to accuse someone of not knowing how to behave. And that's something that obviously we've heard time and time again. Well, not only of Meghan, but also of Harry, but mostly of Meghan, it sounds like. It therefore came as something of a surprise for Meghan to indicate, with Harry's full backing, to many people she was now associating with, that she had regarded their way of life, their values, their codes of conduct as way beneath hers. So think about that. She's going around telling people, well, according to Lacey, she almost spelled it out, that she was here to, quote, rescue us from our pathetic way of doing things. This is according to a courtier who spoke to Lady C. So just take that in, the breathtaking arrogance of that. She's so, well, to quote Lady C, breathtakingly sure of being in the right at all times that she is beyond arrogant. I've never seen anyone in my life so entirely lacking in self-doubt. She's so upfront about it that she's beyond shameless. She walks into a room, takes over, tells everyone how she wants things to be, and sachets out expecting everyone to fulfill her demands. She's beyond dominance, beyond a dominatrix. She fancies herself a force of nature, and a perfect one at that. And Harry considers her perfect. Oh my gosh, you guys. I put stars all over this passage because I couldn't believe it. Again, Lady C, huge credit. She just explains it to a T, and I can hear you screaming into your TV or computer or phone, whatever you're watching me on as well, because that is just the most infuriating thing. To walk into the royal family and to try to change them because you think you know better. I've never heard of anyone so arrogant in my entire life. So then Lady C says, with hindsight, it's obvious that Meghan had an agenda where her wedding was concerned. Yes, she did. She wanted it to be the most beautiful, glamorous occasion. Too bad she missed the mark on her dress. It must be the perfect setting for her introduction to the world at large. It would establish her as a, quote, beautiful, desirable, classy, I'm sorry, I'm laughing at that, woman of style and taste, and someone who had everything, every virtue, from superficial style and beauty to profound depth of character. Yeah, we saw that when she stepped out of her car and swatted that poor guy's hand away. That's real classy, real depth of character there. Then Lady C went on to address that guest list. So it was obvious. She wanted her mother there, but nobody else. No other relatives, no friends. Nobody raining on her parade. She was flying high and didn't want too many links with the past that she had left behind. She saw herself as what would be an A-lister after this and intended to reinforce her status by having real A-listers such as George and Amal Clooney there, notwithstanding knowing them only slightly. So Lady C unfortunately doesn't go too much into her specific antics here. She does, like in one sentence, mention making Catherine cry. Again, as we've heard, it was over Charlotte's dress. But she did go a little bit into like we've heard, the scent of the St. George's Chapel where they got married, and was trying to, spray perfume in the chapel, and she was blocked from spraying it all over the ancient chapel, quote, so it wouldn't smell like the ladies' room at Soho House. So Lady C points out she's attended many events at St. George's Chapel over the years, and it's known for a subtle, delightful fragrance. Basically, Meghan was just being Meghan. So then Lady C has Meghan quoted as saying, "It's our wedding, and we want it done our way." And again, she goes into how Harry actually had little or no input beyond repeating the mantra, "What Meghan wants, Meghan gets." So she points out he was throwing around, Lady C points out that Meg was throwing around like she and Harry were on the same page, but he was just, he's just a puppet. Now, the other little tidbit I learned that I didn't realize was apparently not only did they invite all those celebrities that they barely knew or didn't know at all, but they also put hundreds of people associated with charities. They invited them, which, quote, ratified their credentials as humanitarians who think in terms of charity. I just found that so interesting. So they can't invite any of her family, but they'll invite these people they don't know to give the appearance of being humanitarians. There were many that were left out. Lady C refers to them as, quote, the wider cousinage, that they had plenty of she talks about there were hundreds of available seats in the chapel. And yet people like Lady Amelia Windsor and others were left out. They were glaring omissions, but they'd still rather have these celebrities that they barely met. Again, I go back to, well, hell, they'd rather have the celebrities they've never met versus her family. Also excluded was Harry's good friend, Tom Skippy Inskip. Remember, he's the one whose wedding Meghan allegedly crashed because she and Harry were on a break or broken up or whatever. And so we got all these photos that look like this, where Meghan's pissed and glaring at people, and it's kind of hilarious to look at. But anyway, why was he not included? What was his offense? Well, he tried to warn Harry about not rushing into the marriage. So Harry had been an usher at this wedding. They had been friends forever. Things did not go well with Meghan being there. Tom had tried to warn Harry, hey, maybe slow things down. Meghan got wind of it, and that was that for Skippy. He was not invited to their wedding. So then Lady C goes back into why didn't she invite her family? We know why. And what a mistake that was. And if she had invited them and shown that she was proud of her family and her ascent into this world, that she was not ashamed of her roots, then she would have enhanced her reputation. Quote, instead of which the omission of inviting her family called her values into question. It was a fatal error on her and Harry's part. But that's what you get, right? When you're a know-it-all and you think you know better than everybody else and you make these mistakes, you're going to make these mistakes like this because you won't take advice from anybody else. And then Lady C finishes out the chapter by revisiting that garden party that we talked about in chapter 1. Remember, she alludes to something happened and she'll explain more when it's that time. Well, guess what? It's that time. This was 3 days after the wedding. Harry and Meghan attended the garden party at Buckingham Palace celebrating Charles's 70th birthday. Now, a lot of you guys told me it's because of the I'm bored thing and something about gifts. I wish Lady C had gone into the gift thing. She didn't. I've had a lot of people allege in the comments that she did something inappropriate with gifts. I'd love more information on this. Did she take the gifts? Did she try to take gifts? Tell me what you've heard and I'll do some Googling. But what Lady C reports on is that they attended the garden party and in the presence of representatives of many charities and associates, Meghan looked beautiful. Harry stepped out on the lawn. They plunged in. They took their pictures, and what happened? Meghan, quote, turned to Harry and said, Harry, this is really boring. Let's leave. To his credit, he informed her that they would have to stay. She said then, quote, but Harry, this is so boring. We've done our bit. Everyone knows we're here. Let's go. Harry asserted that they had to stay and they moved on. I've also had many of you in the comments tell me the stupid tongue thing she's doing here, where she thinks she's being super cute and it's really disgusting and disrespectful. She's aiming that at Camilla. Lady C points out that is something you could do in Hollywood. You could get dressed up, you can pose for the pictures, you can stay for a few minutes and then take off, be in the news. Meghan clearly didn't appreciate or understand the civic duties of royalty and aristocracy involving meeting and greeting people on occasions such as these. She didn't understand the difference between a movie star's appearance and the reality of a royal appearance. I read those verbatim from Lady C. I'm going to go with that's a lovely sentiment that she didn't understand. I'm going to say that she didn't give a shit. That would go with the narcissism that we all have come to know from Meghan. But that was all she told us about this garden party. I'd love to know more. I want to be a fly on the wall there. I want to know what actually happened, all the details. But the last part of this chapter was so funny. I was laughing so hard. I'm just going to read you a line. Ready? This is on page 170 if you're following along. Okay. Here we go. It was that Duke of Sussex had gained himself a new nickname at the palace. He was known as Blowjobs Harry because people there were convinced that his brains had been addled through mind-blowingly good sex. Wow. Somebody says it would be touching if it wasn't so dangerous. So then in the next paragraph, Lady C calls him Blowjobs Harry and calls her Meghan. Love it so much. Such a good chapter. I thought it was really good. I really want to know more of those details, like at the garden party, but this is great. Lady C is doing a fantastic job. I'm loving this book. And I can't wait to dive into chapter 7 with you guys. Of course, when Lady C, Catherine, and I go for tea, I'll bring you all with me and tell you all about it. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy you're here, and I hope you're enjoying this book as much as I am. I'm really enjoying this deep dive. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I hope you are too. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it and for supporting the show. And if you want to further support, again, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps, where you can become an executive producer. So I would like to thank my executive producers so much for all the support. So a huge thank you to you guys for supporting this show. I really appreciate it. So a huge thank you, Linda. Thank you to Melissa. Huge thank you, Paige. Thank you to Teresa. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. K. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Aaron and Frank. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Ann M. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Ann H. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Kay King. Thank you, Glynis. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Dewey. Thank you, Patty. Thank you to Adair Becker. Thank you to Erica. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Barb G. Thank you, Diana LOL. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Allison B. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Pauline. And thank you, KT. Thank you, Jolene. Thank you, Stromboli. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Carla. And thank you, Lois, for being here. Really appreciate all of you. If you want to become an executive producer, check out patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, we're diving back into Lady C's book. That's right, we're talking Meghan and Harry, The Real Story by Lady Colin Campbell. I am so enjoying this book. This chapter 7 we're diving into, it's super juicy. I'm excited to talk about it. You start to hear, well, not start, continue to hear them act like real, you know what holes. So we will be deep diving into that, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for being here. Dead Shark Guys also thanks you for being here. Well, actually, she can't say thank you. She just give you the death stare. I have to put in a plug for my Patreon, patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. That's where you can become my executive producers, which I will be thanking later in the show. But also, guys, I have a new tier. If you are interested in helping me host an upcoming episode, there is a way to do that on patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. Check that out. I will be thanking you, executive producers, and I'm excited to be here. Let's jump into this show. So, last episode, I did talk about the wedding. Here's a lovely wedding photo of Meghan. Doesn't she look nice? Like I said last time, at least she's smiling there, right? There's not a fly on her face in this picture. Weird. She's not swatting anybody's hand away. Huh. All right, so this chapter 7, it gets juicy. So they are settling into married life. Now, something that Lady C points off, it's on page, oh God, I already lost the page. It's just a couple of pages. It's like 178, I believe, that they were settling into us against the world mentality, which will work out perfectly when they go us against our families and we're victims on the Worldwide Privacy Tour, right? It was right after they got married. Meghan ended up going on this introductory tour with Her Majesty the Queen. And there's interesting parts here that Lady C lays out for us. Now, we've heard a lot about this tour in the other books, but the part that Lady C brings home is that she knew that Angela Kelly, the Queen's personal dresser, had rung Meghan and informed her that the Queen would be wearing a hat. And you're like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, I'll tell you. That is British monarchy speak for you were to wear one too. So Meghan had informed her that she would not be wearing one, and that was that. So the reason that these minor things become important is it's just interesting to see. You'd think, wow, first tour or first engagement with the Queen, I'm going to do exactly what I'm supposed to do, but obviously that was not the case, even in small details like wearing a hat. Lady C takes the stance of interesting that she was willing to do whatever the, producers of Suits wanted her to do for that role, but for this role she was not willing to make such concessions, even on matters such as wearing hats. Side note, just think about that. The Queen tells or lets you know this is how things are done, trying to help her out. And again, that's the thanks that the Queen gets. I swear to God, if the Queen told me to wear an empty dog food bowl on my head, I would do that. And adorn it with some flowers or something just to be the best team player. I just can't imagine they're trying to help you out and you're just like, nope, I'm going to mark my independence right off the bat. So this was interesting to me. Lady C goes on to explain about outfits and wardrobe, and it's typically that it's encouraged that the royals wear something where they can be seen in photographs, seen in crowds. It's deemed polite to make yourself visible to those who have taken the trouble and the time to come and see you. And I'm laughing to myself thinking, well, that makes so much sense. Think about the beautiful colors the Queen has worn. And then you have Meghan in this cream outfit. And then think about what Meghan was saying in her interview. She wore beige. She was not encouraged to wear the same colors as everybody else. And I'm thinking, no, this is just her, again, spinning this victim narrative and not actually telling you what's going on, which is she was just trying to be disrespectful at every step. So since Lady C goes into the fashion fails, I thought I'd put some on the screen. I've showed these before. I find them hilarious. Enjoy. Yes, that is a tag by her foot. So I'm on page 175 of the book, and if you have an interest in the fashion rules, I would encourage you to read it. I'm kind of jumping over it a little bit because she goes into big details that I never would have thought of. But surely Meghan had people around her. If she had been nicer to them, they probably, of course, they were filling her in, like what's considered cocktail attire and why one doesn't wear, apparently, what was it? It was like transparent sleeves during the day, things like that. When to wear formal morning wear and cocktail wear and why Meghan gets everything wrong. There's her bra sticking out in an event. She even goes into why it's a good idea for the royal family to use the standard greeting of how do you do? Because it's friendly, it's neutral, it opens up the conversation to the other person. Meghan would never adapt to that. So she goes into why she doesn't take on the wardrobe rules. She doesn't take on the greetings. She just... well, to quote Lady C, is it ignorance or is it because she honestly thought her way was the better way? I'm guessing it's the latter. So then they go into the friendships. Well, I don't know that she has friendships, but his friendships with some of his oldest and closest friends. And Lady C says, quote, whom she clearly thought were too frivolous or too traditional for an aware and enlightened couple like Harry and herself. And Harry started to adopt that attitude as well. He's such a puppet. So it's reported with her A-list friendships, such as Serena Williams, different people like that, she hadn't changed at all. But with Harry's friends, she couldn't be bothered to be friendly, nor did she make any attempt to fit in the way she had done while she was on the up and up in Canada, New York, and London prior to meeting Harry. Then Lady C, who I love so much, goes into how Harry became as heavy-going as Meghan. I've said it a million times. I think I hate them both equally, but I go back and forth on that one. I do equally blame them, but damn, she really drug him down. He's just too stupid to pay attention to what was happening. Okay, let me get to the good stuff here. Now, they went to a wedding for Harry's Ledgrove schoolmate, Charlie Van, you can see the name there, who married Daisy Jinks. And just to put in perspective, Charlie's brother, Thomas, has been a really good friend to William and is even little Charlotte's godfather. Isn't that so cute? Okay. So again, these are good friends. Harry was in this wedding. So, of course, Meghan came along and it sounds like all hell broke loose. Lady C so perfectly explains this wedding. She says it was the atmosphere of a typically English upper class. Everyone was relaxed. There was the creme de la creme of English society, but people were really warm and friendly. And she says, contrary to what foreigners think, the British are very friendly and forthcoming, at least in the upper classes. Again, this is according to Lady C. This is where my knowledge, I have no idea. So I'm going to take her word on this. Okay. So this wedding, right? Harry was involved. And it sounds like when the cameras were there, look, she's all smiles. Things are great. She's having a great time. Although Lady C does point out she wore black, and that's not something that's done so much to a wedding. I guess the men wear those suits, but you can see she's the only one in black. But she's waving for the camera. She's friendly, right? No problem? Well, that's not really the case. So according to Lady C, as soon as the cameras were down, yeah, she turned into a nightmare. She tells a story of a girl going up to Meghan, introducing herself, telling Meghan how beautiful she thought she was. She said she knew it was Meghan's birthday. I believe it's her 37th at this point. And, well, according to her, there's some dispute over her age. And wished her a happy birthday, right? The nicest thing to do. Meghan, according to Lady C, looked as if she had committed the greatest faux pas by speaking to her and without saying a word, walked off. It was so cold, someone who witnessed the exchange told Lady C about it and, of course, called it really rude. Can you imagine being so full of yourself that you can't even muster up a, oh my gosh, thank you so much? It takes no effort. But nope, not her. She thought this person was beneath her, so why bother talking to them? Just walk off. But don't worry, it's not the only thing she did at this wedding. Now, I do have to include Page 179, I talked about it before. Apparently, Lady C really does not like Princess Michael of Kent. And she goes on to say none of the other royal women would ever behave like this, with the exception of Princess Michael of Kent, who takes herself as seriously as Meghan does. So Lady C goes on to explain that worse followed during the wedding breakfast. Another girl told Meghan how much she admired her and how wonderful she thought it was that Meghan and Harry were married and how well she thought that Meghan was doing at things. She told her that she was rooting for them and wished them well. What was Meghan's response? She looked her up and down, turned away without saying a word, and froze her out for the rest of the wedding breakfast. Nice, huh? So these strangers are trying to make an effort and be nice to you. You're at somebody else's wedding. They're clearly invited guests of these people, so they're not complete strangers coming up to you. You know what I mean? They are, you know what I'm saying? It's like friends of friends, but oh my God, what a bitch. Just to behave like that. Ugh. Who acts like that? This monster does. These two belong with each other. So Harry was the best man at this wedding, and when he wasn't performing his best man duties, he and Meghan apparently kept to themselves. Someone else told me that, this is according to Lady C, someone else told me that Meghan actually walked off and went to sit on her own on more than one occasion. So this is something that Lady C goes into. She says this has a ring of truth because she was told by many different sources that Meghan has a habit of walking off from big groups. So she explains she does this because she doesn't want to make any effort to fit in. Instead, she'd rather remove herself. She only does this when she's, quote, with a man or when there's a man around with whom she has her eye. He then has to make a choice. He either leaves her to stew on her own or he goes and joins her. That way, she detaches him from the group and has him to herself. Oh, I wish Harry wasn't so painfully stupid and that he'd just leave her on her own. Fine, let her stew by herself. She can figure it out. What a miserable, miserable bitch. He's useless too. Don't worry, I'm not letting him off the hook. Yeah, so she has him to herself. And then Lady C says that she's very good at getting men to dance to her tune. Must be. I don't understand. I just, again, I go back to he's so painfully stupid. Her friend growing up, that Nikki Pretty, we've discussed her before. She's the one, if I'm not mixing it up, I think she's the one that went to England when Meghan, and they have the picture outside of Buckingham when they were young. But remember, Meghan did no research and had no idea who the royals were. I can't get through that without laughing. Anyway, she explained that Meghan is very stubborn and she would never relent. And if you didn't go to her, she'd never come to you. Well, we've seen this, right? She did it with both their families. So by this time, Meghan's various techniques had worked so well with Harry that he was happily, willingly, and entirely in her thrall. Okay, so stepping away from the wedding and just showing you bad fashion again. Here we go. So Lady C then goes on to say this is one of a million of examples of terrible behavior, not just from her, but from the both of them. That often at dinner parties they were alienating, and their public displays of affection were so ostentatious, quote, that onlookers found their conduct embarrassing. They like to huddle together, putting an invisible barrier between themselves and everyone else, as if they were the only couple who have ever been in love, and that everyone present was full of such insignificance that they had no time for them. That's the exact vibe that I think they give up. And then it goes together with the control clutch that she likes to do. And it kind of reinforces that, quote, us against the world thing that Lady C was talking about that we've all noticed. Funny enough, by acting like that, they got their wish. It's them against the world because most of the world can't stand them anymore. So then Lady C goes in to explain these dinner parties that they were reportedly attending and how they would throw a fit if they weren't seated together. And I don't know. I hadn't heard this rule, but apparently it's a rule that you're supposed to seat married couples apart because they'll end up just talking to each other, and you want everybody to mingle with the other dinner guests. And so when they were seated apart, apparently they would throw a fit until they got their way. I just want to know who's still inviting them for dinner parties. They're a fucking nightmare. The two of them. They're depressing. They're, over the top with their obnoxious PDA. Sounds like they just think they're better than everybody else. They can't be bothered to say thank you or to answer somebody when they talk to them. Who's still inviting them? Although I feel like we got our answer to that because even when photographed lately, they're never photographed with friends. It's with people that work for them. But Lady C goes on to say that they were very heavy going in the way that they talked. Conversations were no longer the pleasure they had been before they discovered each other and had set out on the journey to, quote, reshape the world. Gone were Harry's light banter, Meghan's giggly wit and girly charm. That's, again, a quote from Lady C. I can't say that I ever saw that, but I get where she's going with that. Okay, so according to Lady C, Meghan could still be personable with her own friends, but with Harry's friends, she created a chasm of disinterestedness deepened by her flamboyant wokeness, and he mirrored her. Then Lady C goes on to say that Meghan was so pointedly anti everything that the royal world represented that people feared that she intended to detach Harry from his roots. And he seemed to be so completely under her spell that there was no point in trying to intervene, especially as how everyone who had previously tried to intercede had been frozen out. Again, where are Harry's balls? Where is his brain? So Lady C goes on to explain that the old Harry had ceased to exist. A new Harry had taken his place. This Harry sucks. It sounds like I'm just putting together things we've read from all these different books now in his own biography. It sounds like he just never grew up. He's always been a 12-year-old with an anger problem from everything I could tell. And I don't know what you want to call her, swooped right in and saw the opportunity, but enjoy the hell of your own making living with this child. It was also during this time that they became obsessed with, quote, changing the world for the better. What does that mean? Well, it's whatever they felt like at the moment. Whatever their way was the, quote, way for the better. She goes into how they often openly disparage other members of the royal family for their style of doing things, disdaining it as being, quote, stiff, out of touch, traditional, uptight, and old-fashioned. They like to criticize the courtiers for being hopelessly out of date and inefficient, declaring that they weren't, quote, savvy, like Meghan and her Hollywood colleagues who really knew how to get the message out there. When this criticism didn't gain them the latitude to function with freedom the way that they desired, they looked for who was behind the restraints being placed upon them. They concluded that, quote, everyone in the royal family, with the exception of the Queen, was jealous of them, of their popularity, their star quality, and their unique gifts, which, if properly exploited, could change the monarchy and the world for the better. Oh my God, you guys. That's the egos we're dealing with here. They thought they knew better than how this family had been doing things forever. She thought she knew better, and Harry's so stupid he went along with it and didn't say a word. And funny side note, that jealous thing, it actually really makes me laugh because that's such a juvenile response to things. That's the thing you go to when you can't think more intelligently of what's really going on. You go to, oh, well, then they're just jealous. And what's funny is if I get a criticism from a sugar, that's it. I get told I'm jealous. I'm jealous of Meghan, or I'm jealous because I want Harry, which truly makes me laugh. So thank you for that. But it really cracks me up because these two seem to think everybody's jealous of them and their supporters just buy right into it. Again, it's also juvenile and points to the lack of understanding of what's actually going on. So Lady C points out that this, again, talking about people being jealous of them, was taken to mean William and Catherine. And sure enough, it was only a matter of time before Harold and Fraud started making it clear that they believed that William and Catherine were indeed jealous of them and their greater star quality. I find this so freaking funny and just shows how out of touch they truly are with absolutely everything. If you're in doubt, just take a look at the popularity polls and tell me who's jealous of who. I'm also going to leave this here and say, I'm sorry, who's jealous of who now? Yeah, that's what I thought. And in one of my favorite lines so far of the book, on page 186, Lady C refers to Meghan as the, quote, architect of dissatisfaction. She said this in regards to how a lot of people at the palace were realizing that even though both she and Harry were voicing identical concerns, a few words in particular were viewed at the palace as giveaways who was actually saying these things. Meghan and Harry were vociferous and using the word, quote, exploit to describe the failure of the palace to capitalize upon what they described as their, quote, unique or special gifts and star quality. Now, remember, in Harry's stupid book, he also refers back to her stardust and says it came directly from Diana. Ugh, just enough with the mommy issues. Oh, these two. I just get such a kick out of how self-assured they are and how wrong they get every part of this at every step. They had every opportunity in front of them, and they've done it all so completely wrong. And also, I find it funny. Look at the picture of this classy person who wasn't able to speak to somebody at a wedding because she felt like they were beneath her. I'm excited to be here. Let's jump into the show. So this is the Disappointed Duchess edition, and no, I don't believe they should have their titles. I just used them to make fun of these two. But be sure to take a look at the pictures in the background because I had fun putting this one together. Okay, so going back to the we want privacy. See, you can't stop doing that. I can't stop doing that. Anyway, so Lady C goes into, well, who are they protecting themselves from? What purpose? Case in point was Eugenie and Jack Brookbank's wedding. I never said Brooks Bank wedding. Apparently, okay. I had heard, not Lady C talking about, I had heard that they had a huge row at this wedding. Things did not go well. Now, my whole thing on this wedding that really irks me is this is the one where they went around telling everybody they were pregnant. She showed off her, if you want to call it a moon bump, whatever. She showed off that thing in her dress and really made it all about themselves. It was really obnoxious. You just don't do that at a wedding. Anybody with any kind of class or whatever dignity knows this. But nope, not Meghan and Harry. But according to Lady C, they saw this as the perfect way to steal Eugenie's thunder. And they wanted to drive home the point that they were a unit beyond the reach of everyone else. They spent the whole time going from person to person, sharing the news that they were pregnant. Can you believe this? I don't even know why I'm surprised anymore. You have to think, what's the worst thing you could do in a situation and assume that's what they're going to do. But Lady C points out again just how the rules don't apply to them because they went around getting really upset when people would ask where they went on their honeymoon and how it had gone. They would reply, quote, "We're not telling anyone. We're keeping that for ourselves." Bullshit. They ended up telling us on that stupid Netflix documentary, so I guess not anymore when you have something you have to sell. So Lady C goes on to point out that when they refused to say where they had spent their honeymoon, it was in a private island north of the Seychelles, in case anybody's wondering. Ooh, I blew their secret. Who cares? So self-important. Of course, they would think that was a huge fucking deal to reveal. Anyway, Lady C says when asked, she would be so smug, talking about Meghan, would be so smug about not telling people, quote, like a 12-year-old in the schoolyard, scoring points over everyone else by keeping secrets from them. So one thing I will explain about this book, in case you haven't read it and you're just listening along, totally fine, totally get it. It is a very good book. One thing that I was warned about that I will warn you about is Lady C does go out of her way to try to help Meghan. And what I mean is, she can't stand her either, but she tries to give her the benefit of the doubt at every turn. So even in this part, when she's talking about this horrendous behavior of both Meghan and Harry here acting like this when, people around them were asking these questions. Lady C writes, the first year of marriage is customarily viewed as a period of adjustment. Everyone erroneously marked down the increasing signs of alienation to something it was not, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. She did the same thing with the curtsy. I know, I read all the comments. Some people say she curtsied, some people say she didn't. Lady C said she did not. I've watched the videos. I don't see the curtsy. You can make up your own mind about that. We can still be friends. It's totally fine. But I'm telling you, Lady C is convinced she did not curtsy. And so she even, with that, what's the word? With that faux pas, if you will, she tried to make it sound like maybe it was an innocent mistake. Maybe it wasn't what it probably was, which was blatant disregard and disrespect. You want to know why else I don't believe she curtsied? Yeah, I'm going on a tangent. Go with me here. Because they lie about everything. And because it seems to me that everything that doesn't happen, they make a big, extraordinary deal out of lying about, saying it did happen. You name it, they've done it. Look at this bullshit curtsy right here. We have had some heated discussions over on Patreon about this moment right here. We're all on the same page. We just can't stand Meghan. But I'm saying, and So because she made such a big deal out of meeting the Queen and doing this bullshit curtsy that she did here that we all, are disgusted by, that makes me feel like she's making a big deal out of it after the fact because it didn't happen at her wedding. And maybe I'm wrong. It's happened before. It'll happen again. You can be annoyed at me like Meghan's annoyed in this picture and every picture. But we can still be friends. We can still have a common enemy, right? Okay. The 15th of October, which was 3 days after the wedding, a few days before Dumb and Dumber were set to fly out. Remember they were going to do that tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, Tonga. That's when they made the announcement that they were expecting a baby spring of 2019. Okay, this is where stuff gets wild. I talked about this in depth. Even, remember Courtiers, the book, Forward, just bounces out of the gate with stories of how horrible these two were on this tour. Now, Lady C explains that this announcement and this time, Harry and Meghan, they landed in Australia with mass adulation. People were really excited for them and happy and, just all of it. So there started to be red flags. Lady C talks about in Fiji, where Meghan gave a speech to youngsters, supposed to be inspiring them to educate themselves, and she used that occasion to take swipes at her father. So this is where Lady C goes into all the bullshit she's put not all of it, but some of the bullshit she's put her father and Samantha and everybody else through. So there she is claiming she took care of herself and paid for it herself, whereas her father was giving interviews saying that he had paid for the education. She disliked the implication that she was an ungrateful daughter who should be mending fences with him. So she took that opportunity to say, no, she did it herself. Just a total awful thing to do. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, obviously, I don't believe her. I believe that her father paid for it. So blanket statement, know that I am not Team Meghan. But let's just say that's true, that she paid for herself. Is that the time to be talking about yourself when you're talking to a group of girls? Maybe like small examples, but I'm just saying leave it to Meghan to make everything about herself or whatever fictitious narrative of herself she's spinning at the time. And since we're on the topic of no self-awareness, let me show you this. I know I've talked about this a lot because it really gets me. So again, it's been discussed. I've heard 12,500, but now people are saying it's even more than that. Whatever ridiculous amount of money she spent on this outfit is. This is the outfit she wore to go to the homeless pregnant shelter, right? Just total tone deaf, lack of awareness, disgusting, right? But then somebody so brilliant pointed this out. Lady Diana, in my comments, you are brilliant. She pointed out, I didn't even think about this. She met the royals barefoot in ripped jeans, right? But goes to a homeless shelter dripping in jewels and designer clothes. Right. Oh my God, that is so brilliant. Lady Diana, I applaud you. I wish I had thought of it. I did not. You're a genius. But exactly. First of all, I just don't believe a word out of this chick's mouth about Meghan. And let's say it's true. You're bragging about, you're trying to make yourself sound down to earth by saying, I met my future, brother and sister-in-law in ripped jeans and barefoot cooking a meal of chicken, even though I'm vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is that she claimed to be, But claiming to do that, but then shows up for her stage paparazzi picture in this insane outfit, which, by the way, I said it before, I could go to Target, spend less than $100, and I promise you I could look better than this. I just don't understand why so much money to look so stupid all the time. It blows my mind a little bit. But Lady Diana, I applaud you. Thank you for this comment. You're a genius. Okay, Lady C points out that at the time she's giving this speech, it was not generally known, but that her father had the bills to prove that he paid her way through college. All he would need to do and as he would ultimately do when she embarked upon her lawsuit against the Mail on Sunday, was give the newspaper sight of them. So that would prove that Meghan's struggles were with herself, not the things that she's making up externally. And by Meghan staying silent at that time, she may have thought she was coming across as, quote, quiet dignitary to her admirers, but to her critics, it was affirmation of her callousness and her haughty indifference. Okay, so then from there, Lady C goes into, I'm on page 192 if you're following along, the way that, I'm just going to read this to you because I can never speak as lovely as Lady C. Ready? The one unexcusable in the upper regions of society has always been treating his staff in an untoward way. No matter how charming you are to your equals, no matter how apparently philanthropic with good causes, if you get a reputation for treating employees unacceptably, it's akin to a man being known as an abuser. You can be as rude as you want to your friends, your family, or your social equals. If you want to mistreat them and they are dumb or weak enough to let you get away with it, well, that's between you and them. They're your social equals, and therefore they're in a position to defend themselves. However, staff are not your social equals. They are therefore at a disadvantage from the word go. Treating them indecorously breaches every code, and as that matters greatly to people who regard nobility as commendable aim in life, once you acquire a reputation for mistreating those who work for you, you lose a lot of respect and are viewed with suspicion. So according to Lady C, it had been one thing for Meghan to get that reputation for being unfriendly toward Harry's friends and family, but now it was becoming quite another as word began to spread that she was awful toward the people who were there, working for them. Lady C goes on to say what many of us have pointed out, which is most people prefer to give someone the benefit of the doubt. But when the doubts reverberate symphonically, the sound carries. So as we've been saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. This many reports of people saying almost the same thing, it carries some weight to it, right? Then, I love the juicy details. Lady C gives them to us. You ready? She goes into a specific incident which is meant to have taken place shortly after they got married. And it'll make sense why I put this picture here, so I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Meghan, who is well known to be something of a perfectionist, was accused of hurling onto the floor a dress that had not been ironed to her exacting standards. She is claimed to have said, quote, "You call this pressed? This hasn't been pressed. I want this pressed properly now." Okay, so there's that. Just think about that as you look at these beautiful pictures, right? She looks like she's a clothes perfectionist. No, I'm laughing not at what she did. She's a horrible person if this is true. But I'm saying I find it hilarious that the idea that she could be freaking out behind the scenes because something isn't pressed to perfection, because she sure as shit doesn't seem to care about how she looks when she walks out of the house. Case in point, look at the screen. So then Lady C goes on to, again, that tour that we were just talking about. It was Australia and New Zealand, everywhere else. Okay. We've heard this story. Let me just tell it to you from Lady C's point of view. Quote, "This time Meghan was on tour. She lost her temper and threw a hot beverage in the direction of someone who had annoyed her." So we kind of talked about this in Courtiers. It was brought up, as well as Revenge, actually. But this part I did not realize. Ready? Quote, page 193 if you're trying to find this story. Okay. This had resulted in the member of staff resigning and being paid £250,000 to leave without disclosing the incident. I'm going to need that person to come on ahead and spill the tea. Sorry, I had to say that on purpose. But no, seriously, tell me what happened. I need all the details. I know we've heard it from the other authors, but I need to hear it from the person who the tea was allegedly hurled at. Again, I'd like to remind you that this book came out in 2020, so Lady C, she was on it. She goes on to say, quote, "Meghan and Harry were supposedly of the opinion that all negative stories about her were racist and snobbish in origin, but this seemed unlikely." You think? Damn, Lady C's on it, right? She knew from the jump. But yeah, it's everything we've been saying. If they don't like the story, they call it one of the yes words they love to throw around. Again, I say, look at the picture here. Looks like she's a stickler for details of I can't even get through it without laughing. How things are pressed, right? Hello, boobs. I love being petty sometimes. When somebody deserves it like this, I love being petty. Okay, so then let's see what else. Lady C goes on. One of my favorite lines is, quote, "That girl," meaning Meghan, "demands nothing less than total adoration. And if she doesn't get it, you're iced." That's what... Okay, so Lady C calls them royal cousins. So people that were close to the situation that would inform Lady C what was going on, she calls them royal cousins. So apparently a royal cousin told her that. I'm thinking at this moment in the car in the picture that Harry would rather be iced than to be right there. Okay, so then Lady C goes back into how the public in Britain were turning against her, especially as a result of her attitude. But people close to home wanted to know what happened where she could have dumped her father the way she did, especially when she herself had always said he had been an excellent father. So this is a question that Lady C keeps pondering throughout this chapter. Her theory is that Meghan had established common ground with Harry in the most effective way possible. She had hooked him by appealing to his emotions, by presenting herself as a person whose strength had been forged in the crucible of deprivation and pain, just like his. So she was trying to relate to him, right? And she thought that by doing this, it would hook him, which it did. So she couldn't take the chance of having her father around that might possibly tell the truth that they actually had a great relationship and that he did provide for her. And that would blow up all the stories that she had been telling Harry and anybody else who would listen to her. Lady C astutely refers back to she's had 2 blogs. She even wrote about it in the blogs that, quote, "You can be anything you want to be. All you have to do is become it." So she has become this thing that people point out, quote, "The only thing the 2 Meghans had in common was her body." So outside well, I wouldn't even say she looks the same anymore, but she might look the same-ish. But as close friends such as Nikki Pretty explained, she's not the same as before and after, not even kind of. And so she had to dump people like her father who represent her past and could blow up her future. How crazy is that? This is not me surprised. When I hear it, it just knocks me over the head of how disgusting this woman is. So Lady C points out the worst possible scenario for Meghan would have been that her father and fiance had gotten along so well that her dad could have given Harry enough information for him to realize that Maggie Poo was not telling the truth about things, that things weren't as tough as she was pretending that they were for her. So Lady C concludes the chapter by explaining Meghan won Harry by appealing to his genuinely humanitarian instincts. She did this by demonstrating her own humanitarian credentials, articulating philanthropic values which she knew he possessed, while making herself vulnerable in his eyes. So she endeared herself to him by appealing to his sympathies, by mirroring them, and by making him aware of how much she had, quote, suffered at the hands of a cruel world, while gaining his admiration for the brave and noble way which she coped. So again, I am not giving him a pass. He should have been smarter than this. His whole life should have prepared him to, I don't know, use a keen eye to look out for people like this. But nope, he's dopey. He's a dopey prince, and she hooked him, so I don't feel sorry for either of them. They're both awful people. Wow, I really had a lot of fun with this chapter. There's a lot of juicy stuff. I am so excited to keep going with this book. So next episode, we will dive into chapter 8, and I'm here for it. So Lady C starts the chapter. It's around December 2018. She actually says December 11th, 2018, if you want to get specific. Barely a month after a, quote, lithe and svelte Meghan returned to England from their tour. She dramatically burst onto the stage as the unexpected guest of honor at the British Fashion Awards. We know all about this. We've talked about this at length and how rude it was. British Fashion Awards. She wears a French designer, sure. She It was unplanned, unannounced. She did not tell Jason Knopf about it. Lady C does not go into that, but that was deeply discussed in Courtiers as well as Revenge. You know, I love Rosamund Pike, and she was on stage with Meghan, and so I'm actually mad at Meghan because she also interrupted Rosamund Pike. But that's my beef with this whole thing. Okay, but for real. So Lady C points out that she burst on the stage. She's wearing this dress. She's holding her bump like this, and it makes everybody uncomfortable. And here's the thing that you guys astutely pointed out, because I even said in a previous video, you can go back and watch, I said, it's not that she's touching her bump that I find weird. It's the obsessive nature of bump holding that is very odd to me. I think it's totally normal. I mean, I've been pregnant. Most of you in the comments have been pregnant. We've talked about it. You do touch your bump. I touch my bump a lot, but not, this is different. And somebody very astutely pointed out, it's that if you subscribe to the theory of the moon bump, it's like she's trying to hold the bump up. It's not usually seen that you hold the bump from underneath like that. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, damn, that's such a good point. So here's where I love the way Lady C writes. She explains, as I am explaining, you have to be extra sensitive talking about this stuff. That's why I'm being weird. Read between the lines. She does the same thing in her writing. Read between the lines. Because you can't verify that it was a moon bump. It sure has characteristics of a moon bump. One might believe that that's what it is, but one cannot prove it, so one cannot specifically say. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, so we're going to move on past this, but I hope you understand why I have to dance around this a little bit. I have my thoughts. I know you have yours, and you are welcome to leave them in my comments, and I will vigorously nod along as I read them. Yes, I totally agree. So what Lady C does point out is that whatever she is clutching there, whatever you decide that is, it's weird the way she is literally clutching it. Let me read to you what Lady C writes in that at this point. It's page 204 if you're trying to read along. Okay. Before and after handing over the award, she clutched her belly and continued clutching it and clutched it some more and still more. Her hands rooted to the bump in a display of such delight at the happy condition she found herself in that she had to draw the whole world's attention to it. There's something so frankly exultant about the display that it was akin to sharing a secret of which one is inordinately proud with the whole world. I think that is such a great way to express how I felt. I remember when these pictures came out, and I just kept thinking, this is weird, right? This is weird. So to her critics, she was confirming that she was actressy, attention seeking, attention demanding, attention creating, right? And then somebody close to Lady C, she quotes in the book, she just says, a friend, quote, Meghan was afraid that people would miss that she was pregnant if she didn't clutch her belly like a lizard clinging to a tree, or did she fear it would jump off her body if she didn't hang on to it? So those are questions worth posing. Those are interesting questions. Questions I cannot answer for you. You have to make up your own mind on that, but it is a very interesting question indeed. So the more she clutched at it like this, the more people were starting to speculate. And it was somewhere between conspiracy theories to what's going on here? Because there's protocol on royal babies. And this is the part that I truly, until I found you guys, my community, you know what I mean, that explained it to me, I didn't understand. I just kept thinking, why does it matter? Why does it matter if she, because in our real life, we wouldn't judge a baby, we wouldn't judge a woman like if you adopt a baby, if you have a surrogate, whatever, however you get your kid is how you get your kid. That's that. But then you guys so eloquently explained back to me, well, no, in royal families, it truly does matter. The whole bloodline thing, it matters. And so I think that's what has so many people riveted, is that there's all these protocols in place, and every step of the way, they were turning their back on the protocol, which is fine if you're a private citizen. We wouldn't be discussing this if they were private citizens, but they are not. By their own choice, they are not. And if you don't believe me and you say, Jen, they walked away. No, they did not. They just announced their titles for their kids. So no, they have not walked away. So much mystery surrounding this, though. How many months gone was she? The due date was being kept secret at the insistence of the couple. Normally, the royal practices, you'd kind of know when the baby was due, it sounds like. There was speculation that she might be approaching her 7th month and the baby would arrive in March. Of course, we know Archie was born in May. So Lady C goes on to explain she is not a conspiracy theorist. She was prepared to consider that Meghan's conduct, as she drew attention to what she called, quote, the bump, owed more to her actressness than anything else. However, word had spread on the internet amongst an uncomfortably large number of contributors that she was attempting to con the world into believing that she was pregnant when she was not. So Lady C goes on to explain some of her journalist friends kept asking her, did she know anything? And they would even ring her up and say, do you know what's going on? And she'd have to tell them, no, she doesn't know. She discusses, again, always clutching that bump because could it be that she needs to keep it in place? Maybe so. There's growing concern over Meghan's increasingly flamboyant conduct as she answered criticism of her belly by clutching her belly even more resolutely. So the question is, was there an actual bump and was she being a look at me actress? Was there a moon bump and she was trying to hold the thing in place? Or was it somewhere in between? Was it a moon bump where she was also being a look at me? Maybe. What's interesting is that Lady C points out that the frenzy over this could have died down had they been more following protocol and more transparent in their actions, and they just weren't willing to be. They wouldn't discuss due dates. They wouldn't discuss hospitals. They wouldn't discuss, just everything. The godparents, everything looks different. Nothing is signed the same way that the Catherine and William's babies are, it's just a lot of interesting details that are different. My favorite lines from this part of the book is found on page 212. I'm going to read it to you because it applies so perfectly to then and to now. Ready? She felt everyone was being, quote, mean and cruel to her and wanted to put a stop to it. It hadn't occurred to either herself or Harry that the way to achieve closure was to stop behaving in a way that was triggering the objections. Ta-da! They are their own worst enemies. Always. We keep talking about they were just in the news because it sounds like she potentially called that paparazzi on herself and it was one guy taking her picture and, it's the whole, quote, helping the homeless, but in $12,000 worth of designer duds. You know what I mean? Like, she just won't get out of her own way. I go back to if, she's potentially a narcissist and she thinks she knows best, so she's not going to take anybody else's advice and continue to do these awful things. And then Lady C brings up such a good point, which was, why was a royal duchess wearing thin, stretchy fabric pulled so tight over the bump that a belly button was displayed for all to see? It just, again, she's explaining, like, that's just not something that you would typically see in a royal. She's doing these things and then mad that everybody's asking questions about it. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, that's exactly what they do. It's gaslighting. And I hate that word because it's trendy, but I'm telling you, it's my family was racist. I never called them racist. You know what I mean? Like that bullshit that they do where they throw out these claims and then they're like, why are you guys reacting like that? We didn't say that. We didn't do that. Why are you reacting to my bump? I'm the one wearing really tight clothing and bending in a way that most pregnant women cannot bend. Why are you reacting and doubting me? But all roads with them lead to hypocrisy. So they were arguing that they were private at that point. And Lady C goes on to point out that they were, quote, uniquely contradictory. And they were being royalty when they wished to swathe themselves in that cloak, but then being private citizens when that mantle suited them better. That's where we are now. They basically are acting out that half in, half out bullshit that they had pitched that nobody was going for. So she goes on to show how much Meghan was really looking for the spotlight. Well, I guess Meghan and Harry both, but I'm pointing at you, Meghan. Really trying to get the spotlight for herself always, but especially around this time. Now, she goes into an interesting part of the royal life that honestly I'd never given thought to, but makes perfect sense. I'm going to read it to you because I just found it interesting and I had highlighted it in my book. All royal diaries are agreed 6 months in advance. If the Queen is doing something in Aberdeen that warrants press attention, the remainder of the family undertakes pedestrian duties that will not make the papers, but will address the needs of the community the royal is serving. The same rules apply across the board. One royal does not steal another's thunder. Doing so undermines the whole system and defeats the long-term goals of the monarchy, which are to further various initiatives in a meaningful way so that the public appreciates what's being done in its name. So beautifully put. I say it all the time. I love the way Lady C writes. It's gorgeous, right? So perfectly expelled out. I just found that interesting and such an interesting way of explaining that, and makes sense with everybody except for these two jackasses, because we always hear this, right? It often, people have pointed out, it coincides usually with something that William and Catherine are doing. They'll be on a tour, these two decide to announce something or to make waves or to get in the press. It's kind of their go-to move, right? Seems to be happening around coronation as well. I expect more stupid headlines from these two. Anything to try to draw attention to themselves. Okay. Now, going back to whatever's going on under her dress, which is not a sentence I normally say, although sometimes I do when I'm talking about what's going on with her bras, but that's a different conversation. Okay. Whatever's going on under her dresses here, I don't understand. Okay. But there's an established regimen for royal pregnancies and births. Now, what's interesting, again, I didn't know this, it was customary up until about 2 generations ago that the royal mothers would have the babies at home. All 4 of Queen Elizabeth's children were born at Buckingham Palace. This is how it was done. They always made public the they used the court gynecologists and obstetricians, leading people in their field whose reputations were beyond reproach. Therefore, there would be no doubt as to who was carrying the baby or who had given birth to it once it was delivered so transparently. Now, she goes into a really interesting history all about how many people would be in the rooms during the birth just to verify that, the royal mom had delivered the royal baby. But then royal babies started being delivered in hospitals. The Lindo Wing, I hope I'm saying that right, of St. Mary's, Paddington, and London became the favored place. But once more, there was no secrecy. The royal mother was surrounded by medical staff, by senior doctors, and their names were being made public as a way of eliminating any suspicion of subterfuge. So they wanted to make sure that everything was publicly verifiable through unimpeachable witnesses. The public, after all, had a right to know that their potential monarch had a right to the throne, and that the rights were being respected through reinforcing presence of witnesses. This was true even under absolutist monarchies. So she even references Marie Antoinette. Apparently her room was so stuffed full of courtiers that at the birth of her first child that she grew faint from the lack of air. So they ended up having to kick out a couple of the witnesses, but that's how many witnesses. And she points out this is an extreme example, but that's how important it is to have witnesses. It has to be beyond doubt. Okay. So then she goes on to explain another reason why this is so important to clear up. And I'm just going to breeze over this. Go with me on this journey. In fact, I'm just going to read it to you. Ready? Okay. William and Catherine sometimes travel with all three of their children in the same aircraft, something that no other heir to the throne has done before. I'm knocking on wood. I hate reading this part, but go with me. Should the plane crash, Harry and Meghan would be heirs presumptive after Prince Charles. Well, this is, okay, so Lady C put this book out in 2020, so of course now we know he's King Charles, but she's talking about that the Queen was in her 90s. You get the idea. I don't have to spell it out for you. Yeah, God forbid. I don't even want to talk about it, but you know where I'm going with this. So that close to the throne, you have to verify. But these two, no, the rules don't apply to them except for when it benefits them. But if it's going to play by the rules or give any transparency, they're not doing it. Lady C points out that, again, this heir being so close to the throne makes their demands for privacy, quote, unconstitutional. So whether through ignorance or what was going on, it was beside the point. They were feeding rumors that she was not pregnant and that their expected child could possibly be born by a surrogate. Because, again, they were not following any protocol at all. Sounds like they were whining behind the scenes about how badly the public was reacting to their lack of transparency. So then they decreed that the baby would not be born in a hospital, but at home. Of course, again, there had been no home births for 2 generations. They continued to insist that they were private individuals who had a right to have their baby as and how they please. So again, like I said, that's all well and good if you're a private citizen, but that's not what's happening here. You can't have the benefit of royalty without, dealing with some of this stuff. So them behaving like this, it was feeding a frenzy of their own creation. So then she announced she would be retreating from public view until the baby was born. And moreover, she and Harry had no intention of revealing when the birth had taken place until they were good and ready. So yet again, conveying the message that she disapproved of any royal traditions. Lady C explains that several of her journalist friends told her they had misgivings about what was happening, but the press had fallen in line, but that the Sussexes were obsessed with privacy and were insisting upon, quote, being treated like private individuals instead of the royals that they were. So rather than the newspapers printing the suspicions that the groundwork was basically being laid for deception on a massive scale, they ran with the story that Harry and Meghan were behaving like spoiled, demanding, hypocritical brats who contradictorily wanted to be treated as private citizens when it suited them, despite requiring at all other times that they must be accorded all the privileges and constitutional dignities that went along with being royalty. My God, they're still, they're still singing that tune. I do wish that the royal family at that point had said, you either fall in line or you get out, like you're either in this or you're out. Like you're doing this the right way or you're not doing this, it would have saved us so much and we wouldn't be where we are now, but here's where we are. So this is where I'm going to end it. This has been a very interesting episode. I apologize for my having to dance around things. I hope you understand why. It's just the nature of the delicateness of the situation. It's hard to talk about. If we were sitting together having a cocktail or a tea, I would tell you how I really think. Well, you kind of know how I think, but you know what I mean? Like I'd spill it all. harder for me to do on this topic and this forum. So just bear with me on this. We'll get through it together and we'll get into the more, I don't know, the juicy details. That's what I'm looking forward to. We left off talking about why the big secret. What's going on with these two? Remember, this is about Archie's birth, and why couldn't they list the name of the attending physicians? Why were they being so weird? We were speculating, was it for the attention? They seem to pretend to hate the attention and demand, we want privacy. Everything that they're known for, right? Where they spew these privacy things, but then do all these weird things to get attention. So just a very strange time. So we discussed this in detail in the Tom Bower book. And then again, I believe it came up in Courtiers, but I would say mostly in the Tom Bower book, we talked about it, how everything was planned around this CBS thing. And if you don't know what I mean, it was like they weren't telling the palace what was going on. They were being sketchy. And then they planned the announcement of the birth around CBS's morning airtime schedule. It was all a deal with Oprah and Gayle, and it was very bizarre. And again, I mean, it's all Meghan, right? I mean, I'm not saying Harry's innocent, but I'm saying it's all Meghan. She had this all planned out, and this was just part of the game. So a lot of strange things happened with the birth of the baby. And what I mean is, yes, they put out this, I mean, this is a tradition for the royals to do. They put out this announcement. It's literally set out. I mean, you guys, you guys can probably explain it to me better than I can explain it to you, but they set out these birth announcements like this. But you notice when at the time, the Cambridges children were born, their birth announcements look different because the doctors actually signed the announcement. But weirdly enough, in this one, no signatures. Instead, it was more important to them to announce it on Instagram. That's right. They had started this Instagram a month before, and they made the announcement on that. So the part that I found so interesting, I didn't realize, Lady C fills this in brilliantly. Again, page 223 if you're following along. She explains that Meghan flew out to LA. She had flown out shortly after the baby's conception with the specific objective of employing the, quote, best Instagrammers in the world. The brief she gave them was straightforward enough. Here's the point she gave them. Here we go. Point 1. I need you to create the world's #1 Instagram account for me. It needs to end up having more followers than any other Instagram account on earth. You hear me like smiling and laughing at this because of course she would say that. Her ego is bigger than anybody else's on earth, so why not try to make her Instagram bigger than anybody else's on earth? Yeah, good luck with that. Number 2, I want to be bigger than Diana, Princess of Wales. Ooh, I wonder how Harry has taken that. I can't imagine. Well, I was going to say I can't imagine that's going over well, but he seems to be excited anytime she brings up Diana, so he's probably too stupid to notice. Number 3, I need you to make me the most famous woman in the world. Now, this makes me laugh because I'm like, well, you kind of got your wish because you're now one of the most infamous. So apparently that was her list for the most famous Instagrammers in the whole world, whatever. Here's what I came up with, though. Had she played the game, meaning had she stayed in this role and actually tried and dedicated herself to it and done a good job, and she would have been adored potentially. You know what I mean? I guess she'd have to have a personality transplant, but you get where I'm going with this. If she had taken the Kate approach where she actually tries her hardest and, you know, bonds with people and has the charm and charisma, I know I'm asking a lot, she could have been one of the most famous women in the world, but she can't get out of her own way. Her own narcissistic tendencies, her awful personality, all of it, it just reeks and people can smell it a mile away. So of course it's just going to backfire and I can't help but laugh. So Lady C goes on to explain, well, she was naive to think the palace wouldn't find out about this. Oh, get this. Also, according to Lady C, Meghan told her media people, quote, she wanted to break the internet. Again, mission accomplished. You've made the world like agree on one thing finally, that no one can stand you. So just by doing that briefing with her Instagram and it getting back to the palace, it's like the light bulb finally went off that, oh, she's a fame addict. Lady C, of course, points out that Harry seems to be a Meghan addict. Ew. Okay. So then we get back to where we see in the picture here. So they are presenting the baby. I remember, again, I believe it was in Revenge. I've read so many of these books lately that they explained that Gayle King had the exclusive for CBS. So they covered the baby's face. That was part of it. It had to do with if I remember this correctly, because Lady C doesn't exactly explain, but it's like they had to cover kind of the baby's face a little bit. But CBS got the exclusive and called her a very proud mother and him an over-the-top giddy dad. They talked about radiating joy, but they wouldn't provide the baby's name until later in the day. Talking about Harold and Fraud. So that's when they introduce him as Master Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. That's a big name for a little baby. So Archie's name showed that Harry and Meghan's gift for surprise had not deserted them. The baby's name broke every rule in the royal name book, and as it was unexpected, untraditional, and to quote Lady C, as woke as could be. So never before had royal children been given a nickname rather than a Christian name. But Lady C explains that this is just another instance where the rules were set aside for Harry and Meghan. The palace was actually trying to work with them. It was just interesting because I didn't know this. Apparently the Yorks were prevented from calling one of their daughters a non-royal Christian name because there was no royal precedent for it. So this was proof yet again that the royal family and the palace were tearing up the rule book to facilitate Meghan and Harry's choices. Okay, so I'm going to go into something else interesting that Lady C explains that it's different rules in America than it is for England. Apparently in England, the legal mother is the surrogate, even though the legal father is the inseminator. So under English law, the woman whose egg produced the child has no legal status at all. If she wishes to be acknowledged as its mother, she has to adopt it. Even then, the child remains, quote, illegitimate at birth. So that's different than here in America, where the law in the U.S. states that a child born of a surrogate is the lawful and legitimate child of the mother and father who have arranged the surrogacy. Again, not something I would typically discuss here, but Lady C makes this interesting point for those who are under the belief that that may be the case, that surrogacy might be involved. Okay, now side note, when I was recording, what was it? I think it was for Revenge. I think it was for Revenge. And I got to this part where Harry makes this statement outside and he's like super excited about it, right? You guys pointed out, I did not know this, that Harry messed up and said that the baby was 2 weeks old, but was pretending that the baby was just hours old. So that's fishy as hell. I didn't know that until you guys let me know. I'm just going to read this part of Lady C's book to make it make sense. You ready? Okay. Harry's comment during the interview further fostered the theories about Archer not being born when and to whom it was alleged. Had Harry wanted to increase rather than decrease the rumors about his son's birth, he could have not done so more efficiently than the response he gave when asked who the baby looked like. He said, quote, "Everyone says the baby's changed so much over 2 weeks. We're basically monitoring the changing process. Monitoring how the changing process happens over the next month," end quote. This was an extraordinary statement to make. Archie was supposed to be only 2 days old. Sorry, I said hours earlier. I meant 2 days. Okay. Babies don't change appearance markedly and frequently within 48 hours of being born. Yet here was Harry asserting not only that his son kept changing appearance over a 2-week period, but he had done so with an extent that was impossible to say who he looked like, notwithstanding the baby being officially 2 days old. So it just made no sense, and it further added to the speculation. What are we doing? What are we talking about? You're supposed to be. The party line was that the baby was 2 days old, and Harry's talking about 2 weeks. And again, let's say, okay, he's, new parent exhausted, and he screwed up and said weeks instead of days. Fine. A baby doesn't change in 2 days like that. My baby didn't look like one or the other of us in 2 days. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But then he realizes what he said, and Lady C points out he starts to waffle. And it's almost like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that he's realized he's made a slip of the tongue. So not only does he waffle on about monitoring the changes process over the next month, but he slips back in that his son has been around, but it's only the last 2.5 to 3 days. So he doesn't even remember if it's 2.5 or 3 days. Notwithstanding the fact that Archie wasn't officially more than 2 days old. So again, he's contradicting everything. That's all they can do is tell lies. Nothing makes any sense. So there's another difference in the UK versus in America. Apparently in the UK, hospitals don't register births. The parents do that. And the reason she's explaining this is to go on to say, no one checks the information given. So what you tell them is what it is, and that's that. And she explains that if, hypothetically, the child was considered, quote, illegitimate children cannot inherit the crown. Interesting. So while explaining all this, Lady C gives one of my favorite lines of the entire book. It's found on page 232. I'm going to read it to you because I love it so much. You ready? She, meaning Meghan, she's also the most pretentious person anyone will ever meet. Have you seen her handwriting? I just love it because we always make fun of that. Almost as contrived as her personality. Perfect. That's exactly what I said. It is. It's so contrived. It's so affected, I would say. So it sounds crazy, but Lady C then backtracks after discussing the birth of Archie and talks about the incidents where the British public really couldn't stand Meghan, I guess. And the first one is her baby shower. So we talked about that at length as well, about how it was reported to have cost $300,000. Ridiculous. That she flew on a private jet with Amal Clooney, that her famous friends were there, and they used it all as a paparazzi photo shoot. And of course, Gayle King was there as well. So Lady C says that she was told that Meghan was extremely upset by the criticism leveled against her. She simply couldn't understand why the British weren't thrilled with her as the Americans were. And I'm going to go ahead and disagree with her there. But I see what she's saying. I guess at that point, America was still somewhat enchanted. But I'm going to say the press does not speak for all Americans. I think we can all agree on that. Like, just because they're reporting that people liked her, I don't think people liked her by this point. Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't like her by this point. But no one knows exactly when Meghan decided that Britain would not work out for her. Some of her friends believed that she had no intention of staying. And then Lady C points out that it may have had to do about this time when she went back to New York for her baby shower. So right after the furor over her baby shower started to die down, she and Harry found themselves caught up in more controversy. It had to do with moving out of Nottingham, not caught as they called it, into Frogmore. The refurbishments were said to have cost around £2.4 million and were being paid for by the state. So their critics wanted to know why taxpayers should absorb the cost when they were being given free accommodation. As usual, it sounds like they viewed the criticism as completely unfair. I'm sure they threw out the S words that they love to throw around, and they didn't understand why the state wouldn't just pick it up for them. But I just love knowing how this has worked out since then. I find that very funny. And within a month of Archie's birth, we have this stupid scene right here. Oh, you talk about pissing me off. Look at this. We've discussed this at length too. You guys have explained it to me so well. I just find it fascinating. I think I'd misreported before. Look, there she is in her royal box. That's not what happened. She decided to wear some jeans and a hat, and you're not supposed to do that. And she was breaking Wimbledon's cardinal rules, and she had not cared that women don't wear hats at Wimbledon. They have the potential to block the view of the person sitting behind the wearer. It's therefore considered, quote, in poor form to wear hats. But Meghan's attachment to the hat suggested she was living out some sort of fantasy of what California girls do when they have the chance to attend Wimbledon. Nevertheless, Meghan's breach of the Wimbledon dress code earned her criticism, though what really incensed her critics was the perception that her conduct conveyed both contemptuousness and arrogance. So she had ensured that she could wear a hat by clearing out the 40 or so seats behind her. The only people allowed within spitting distance of her were her suite. Behind and beside her, there were row after row of empty seats. Outside, there were queues of people being prevented from witnessing the match, from occupying seats which they had paid for, while Meghan and her Northwestern University mates were flanked by her people in a buffer zone of empty seats to keep her comfortable. That is so disgusting. Lady C points out it was perfectly fine for the Queen, for Prince Philip, for Duke and Duchess of Kent, the Cambridges, Princess Alexandra, you name it, even the late Diana, to sit around regular paying, Wimbledon attendees. But no, not for Meghan. No, not good enough for her. She had to clear out these seats of these people who found it completely disgusting, and then she can't figure out why nobody can stand her. And then one of my favorite parts is Lady C explains if Meghan and her team had tried their hardest to come up with something that was unpopular, they could not have bettered what happened next. So her security people, they ended up, because of her, talking to members of the public, telling that, so these members of the public were taking selfies. Well, they informed them that they could not use their cameras in the presence of Her Royal Highness, as she was attending Wimbledon in a private capacity. Bullshit. I love Lady C. She explains it so well. She's like, no, this is a private place. You're in front of television cameras, which are beaming images into hundreds of millions of homes around the world, while Meghan was a guest of a national institution which she would not have access to had she been a private individual. So no, you're not fuck off. You're in public. There's no expectation of privacy at that point. So Lady C goes on to explain the public have a right to look at anyone around them. They have a right to treat a public figure with the appropriate degree of recognition, attention, and respect that said public figure's presence realistically generates. So she's basically saying, as long as you're civilized, what is the problem? It's inappropriate for a public figure to think that she has the right to regulate the conduct of the public to the extent that people can't even look at her, can't smile at her, or if the environment seems right, even approach respectfully. And had she taken time to actually learn the way to behave or handle this royal role, she might understand that better instead of, quote, hitting the ground running like she said she was going to at the beginning and not taking any advice from anybody. So I'm mad. I'm mad at this arrogant, narcissistic bitch. I've heard this story a million times, but it still makes me mad because the nerve.